Good evening. It is 6:30. Members of council are assembled. When you're ready to begin.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores. Welcome all members. Welcome everybody in the gallery this evening. Everyone watching by the live stream. It's great to have everybody with us and welcome. The third item on the agenda, or the second item on the agenda, sorry, is the land acknowledgement, and the Deputy Mayor has that.
Thank you. We acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which consists of the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation. We understand this land holds immense significance to the people of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. We appreciate those who live and work alongside us today and who continue the traditions of their ancestors as stewards of the land we are privileged to inhabit. We thank them for the contributions they have made in both caring for the land and in shaping this community. We commit to truth and reconciliation, to acknowledging the truth about what happened to Indigenous peoples because of colonization, and to reconciliation, which begins with each and every one of us. As a local government and public organization, we are dedicated to learning about Indigenous culture, to fostering a better relationship with First Nations and their people, and we commit ourselves to actions that move us forward on a path to healing along with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation.
Thank you. The third item on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest. Ask any member if you have one of those you'd like to declare. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My disclosure of pecuniary interest is for agenda item 6.2, draft plan of subdivision S2025-004, local official plan amendment L 2025-016, and zoning bylaw amendment Z2025-027 SKG Holdings. I have a pecuniary conflict of interest because I live at and own 225 Emerald Drive, which is across the street from the proposed subdivision and the proposed entrance to the extension to Emerald Drive. It's possible that the value of my property may be affected in some way.
Okay, thank you. Are there further pecuniary interests? Seeing none, of course, you can declare one anytime if you need to. No additions, deletions, or amendments this evening, so we're on to adoption of the minutes. And I have a resolution that council adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of April 13th, 2026 as presented. Is there a mover and seconder? The Vice Deputy Mayor, Councillor Dubinsky. Questions or comments to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. All right, so now we're on to public meetings, and we have 3 public meetings this evening. The first one is a public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment Z-2025-052 for Hill. This is a public meeting under the Planning Act. If anyone from the public is interested in this application or wishes to receive a notice of the decision, please send an email to bcplpe@brucecounty.on.ca. First, we will receive a report from planning staff. Then we will hear from the public who are here in person, virtually, or who have submitted correspondence to the email address mentioned above. I'll note members of the public will have one opportunity to speak to this application, and there's a maximum of 5 minutes for a presentation from members of the public. Then council will have an opportunity to ask questions, and I'll ask them to reserve their comments on the application until after we've heard from the public. Members of the public are advised that the right to appeal the decision on this application is limited to specified persons and public bodies as defined in the Planning Act, or the owner or applicant of the land subject to the amendment who have provided oral or written comments to council on the application before the decision is made. After we've heard from the public, council will discuss and consider a recommendation on this application. So I'll now declare the public meeting to be open and ask the planner on the file to present the application, and the planner on this file is Julie Steeper. Ms. Steeper.
Good evening. In light of time this evening, I will keep my presentation brief. The purpose of the application is to permit 2 existing residential units without a principal commercial use at 576 Gustavus Street. The property is in a commercial zone. The zone does not permit a residential use without a commercial component. The conversion of the building was not constructed under a building permit. The applicant is seeking to permit the existing development. A building permit may be issued for the conversion and any further changes that may be required if the zoning is approved this evening. Staff are supportive of recognizing and permitting the existing use, including the additional residential unit. Bringing these uses into conformity with the zoning bylaw represents good planning, as the historic form of the building is residential. The site will still maintain the ability to accommodate commercial uses over the long term while it reflects the current function of the site. The residential units are already permitted, however, accessory to a commercial use. Originally, 4 parking spaces were proposed with access from the lane at the back of the property. The town expressed concerns regarding these spaces. The applicant revised their site plan to address the concerns by removing the parking shown at the rear. The site is able to accommodate the required parking for the proposed uses. No public comments were received on this application, and this concludes my report.
Okay, thank you very much for the report. So now we'll hear from members of the public, and I'll ask first if the applicant or the agent is present. And I see the agent for the applicant. Please introduce yourself, sir. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Ron Davidson. I am a planner representing the owner, Anthony Hill. I believe this is a relatively straightforward matter, and I'm thinking that all the people behind me don't care about this particular proposal. So Anthony bought the property about 2 years ago. There's a building on the property. When he purchased it, it had 2 residential units and no commercial use. And this hasn't changed, and nothing is proposed to be changed. So to be clear, he is not responsible for the fact that a building permit apparently was not issued. That's not on him, nor is he responsible for the fact that there's 2 units in the building. That's how he bought it. Why he is here tonight is right now the mortgage is held by a private individual. And in order to change that to a commercial lender, they need proof of zoning compliance, and he can't get it. So that's why we're here. So we applied to amend the zoning bylaw. Just quickly here, we don't believe it qualifies as a legal non-conforming use, and that's not relevant because if it was, we wouldn't be asking for an amendment to the zoning bylaw. Anthony thinks that there was a commercial use some point in the past, maybe 20 years ago. Not entirely sure. I will note this, that some properties located within the side streets of Port Elgin's downtown, which are Zone C, commercial core, they're very similar. There's no commercial use, but they probably predate the zoning bylaw, and therefore they have a legal status. There examples of this are the property to the immediate north and to the immediate west, where again, zone commercial, but used solely for residential purposes. In my mind, it's as a planner, it's a good use for the property. It's consistent with the town's desire to promote and encourage and create more apartment units. The property is very close to the downtown, so it's within walking distance for the residents living in the building. And keeping in mind with the proposed zoning, it would not preclude a commercial use from being reestablished in this building in the future. This is so it's not going to take that away. And the bottom line is that the application conforms with the town's official plan and is consistent with the provincial planning statement. That's my presentation.
Thank you very much. So now we'll ask if anyone else from the public is here to speak either in support of the application or with questions, concerns, or objections to the application. I don't have any on my list here with respect to this application, so I'll just ask if anybody in the gallery at this moment wishes to speak to this application. I don't see anybody jumping up for this one. So I'll just ask the clerk, are there any written submissions that were not already discussed in the planning report presentation or oral submissions?
There was none.
Okay, so now if there are no members of the public, and I once again don't see any, I'll ask if there's any members of council who have final questions before we close the public meeting to discuss the application. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, and through you, you can stop me if this belongs in the other portion. I just wanted to ask a question about why the town was not supportive of parking at the rear. It just seems to me it's a lane that has access to parking for other opportunities back there. And residential parking, of course, has the ability to back out onto a road, unlike some other kinds of parking. So Gustavus is a well-traveled, busy, fairly congested street most of the time with parking on both sides and a couple of very active businesses with in and out traffic. I'm just curious, why would we not want to enable parking at the rear of the property?
Manager Development Services.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Charbonneau. So it's not that staff were opposed to parking from the rear at all. It's that the proposal was initially showing parking spaces that were backing directly onto the lane. And there are provisions in the zoning bylaw that require parking areas, which this was meeting the definition of a parking area based on the number of parking spaces proposed. Those provisions include being set back a minimum of 3 meters from the street line. And so in discussions between the town staff and the applicant, there was a desire to not have those provisions be met, and they weren't required to meet the minimum parking requirements. So it was decided that those parking spaces would just be removed from the proposal.
So to paraphrase what you said, there was a requirement that there be a setback, and there was something related to backing out. But on the other side of the property that fronts onto Gustavus, because it is residential parking, it's acceptable for it to just abut the road allowance directly, and then they can back out to Gustavus. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mayor Charbonneau. There's this distinction between a driveway and vehicles parking in a driveway versus a parking area. And so there are specific provisions that apply to a parking area.
Further questions from the members? The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had two questions. One of the owner, and then one was about the parking. And the parking, again, I just wanted to go back to it. So, I mean, I drove by again tonight. I was there on the weekend, drove by again, just take another look. But so the parking of the 4 cars, just to help me understand, it's pretty tight there, Gustavus, out front. Where are those 4 cars going to park then? I mean, you've talked about the rear access, the rear lane being shut down. So where will they enter in off of Gustavus, park in behind and back out again? There doesn't seem to be a lot of room out front. Is there enough room for 4 cars out front?
The Manager of Development Services.
To clarify, there's only 2 parking spaces required to facilitate this proposal. So there are 2 parking spaces in the driveway that front onto Gustavus.
Of the owner, and I have utmost respect for Mr. Hill. He's done a lot of good development in town. I just want to hear again, how long has Mr. Hill owned this property? 2 years? 2 years. And I just want to hear it again that in those 2 years he's owned it, there's been no work done to those 2 units?
No. Please introduce yourself, Mr. Hill.
I'm Anthony Hill, and the answer to the question is 2 years. I've owned the property. And I bought the property from Jim Bowman. It was an existing 3-bedroom on the east side and what we would call a granny flat on the west side, and that remains unchanged.
So the former owner is the one that...
Actually, I think it predated Jim and Patty even.
Before that.
Last I remember, because I've been here close to 50 years in town, probably in the 90s would have been the last commercial unit that I recall. And I think it was a mortgage center from some old photos that I found. And I remember there was a hairdressing studio when I was in high school. Okay. That's about it. But it's been residential for a very long time.
It just always concerns me when I read in a report that this was done without a permit. So it was a little bit misleading for me when it indicated that this work was done without a building permit, but it really wasn't you.
No.
The planner alluded to that right at the beginning. So I'm glad you clarified that, Mr. Davison, because that's important. Because we had one of these similar situations here, you remember, not too long ago, 2 of them. And so that's good to hear. I didn't expect it would be you would be doing something like this without a building permit. So
no, if anything, Mike, I appreciate the opportunity to explain that and expand on that, because I did bring in all of the requisite certified trades to look at the safety life systems of the building and enhance those accordingly, which didn't require any permitry, but I've done the over and above stuff that you would be expecting of me. And yeah, I feel good about the whole thing.
No, that's good. And I don't know whether it's the right time to comment on this, but I bet there's a bylaw later on the agenda. And I think we're bringing 2 units into our inventory for rental units, which I think are very important.
Yeah.
And I thank you for doing that. I think it's a good investment for our community.
I believe so.
And I'm going to be supporting the bylaw later on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there further, Councillor Halpin?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. This question would be for the planner. So we're changing the zoning to make it residential. And if it has a commercial use come up, will I have to change the zoning again to allow for commercial?
Ms. Steeper?
If I may, through you, Mayor. No, so the application this evening is the property will still maintain a commercial zoning. It'll just permit the residential uses. So it'll allow for commercial in the future if that is the desire.
Okay.
Thank you. And thank you very much.
Okay. Are there further questions at this moment from the members? Seeing none, then that will bring us to the end of the public meeting. So I'll now declare the public meeting to be closed, and I'll read the resolution. The resolution is the council approves zoning bylaw amendment Z-2025-052 for Hill and bylaw 37-2026. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the deputy mayor, seconded by the vice deputy mayor. Questions or comments to the resolution? The deputy mayor.
And this is a comment that I don't think has an answer, but even though we're saying parking is not included at the rear of the property, they can still park there. You know, access off that lane is there. So, I'm just, at some point, it'd be nice to know what opportunities we have to address issues where we say, no parking at the rear, but then parking just happens there. So that's a comment more than a question.
Okay, thank you. Are there other comments or questions at this stage? I don't see any. I think it's a good development. It'll be nice to see a couple of units there. And of course, it really is a house, looks like a house. And so I think it'll be well suited for residential use in that location. So certainly has my support. And if there's no further questions, I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. Thank you. All right, so now we're on to item 6.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. All right, so now we're on to 6.2. So next on the agenda is a public meeting for draft plan of subdivision S-2025-004, local official plan amendment L-2025-016, and zoning bylaw amendment Z-2025-027 for SKG Holdings / Chantry Crossing. This is a public meeting under the Planning Act. If anyone from the public is interested in this application or wishes to receive a notice of the decision, please send an email to bcplpe@brucecounty.on.ca. First, we will receive a report from planning staff. Then we will hear from the public who are here in person, virtually, or who have submitted correspondence to the email address I just mentioned. Once again, members of the public will be given one opportunity to speak to this application with a maximum of 5 minutes. Then council will have an opportunity to ask questions, and I will ask them to reserve their comments on the application until we have heard from the public. Members of the public are advised that the right to appeal the decision on this application is limited to specified persons and public bodies as defined in the Planning Act, or the owner or applicant of the land subject to the amendment, who have provided oral or written comments to council on the application before the decision is made. After we've heard from the public, council will discuss and consider a recommendation on this application. So I'll now declare the public meeting to be open, and I'll ask the planner on the file to present the application. And the planner for this file is once again Ms. Julie Steeper. Ms. Steeper.
Mr. Mayor, point of order. Is there a reason why Ms. Steeper is not up on the screen?
I don't know if there is a reason. Is there an issue with bringing up an image of the planner, or is the planner?
I'm here. Maybe I can pin. Let's just see here. Can everybody see me?
No, we can't. We weren't able to see the last time for the last presentation. Oh, there you are, Julie. Okay, there you are. Mr. Steeper, whenever you're ready.
Great. The purpose of this presentation this evening is to present the application council and the community and to obtain feedback. At a later date, I will present from this meeting. If approved, the subdivision would be subject to a number of conditions. For the purpose of this meeting tonight, we have prepared preliminary conditions. They are under review with the town and agencies and would need to be finalized before a recommendation can be brought forward. The applicant is proposing a residential subdivision consisting of 33 single detached lots and 18 townhouse lots fronting onto Albert Street and Emerald Drive extensions. The proposal includes a utility, includes a block for highway commercial uses, a number of blocks that would be dedicated for public purposes like walkways, stormwater management, open space, highway widenings, and 2 small reserves. The lands were previously included in a larger plan of subdivision, earlier phases of which included the development of existing homes along Emerald Drive, and approval granted in 2004, lapsed in 2015. To be implemented, the proposal requires an official plan amendment to refine the existing designation boundaries to ensure alignment with the proposed lot fabric of the proposed subdivision. No new designations are proposed. The intent and function of the official plan remain unchanged. The proposed zoning bylaw amendments are required to match the proposed lot fabric, and special provisions are being sought. The special provisions would allow a reduced minimum lot area for single detached lots from 450 square meters to 400 square meters. It would also permit an increase to the maximum lot coverage for a lot containing a townhouse unit with units on both sides, meaning no side yard, from 44% to 55%, and would allow an increase in the maximum coverage for a driveway in the front yard from 50% to 56%. It would permit opportunities to have residential uses as long as the ground floor is used for commercial purposes in the commercial zone. There are some outstanding technical matters regarding the transportation impact study, the cul-de-sac design and trail relocation, upgrades to off-site municipal infrastructure, an updated and phase 2 environmental site assessment, and confirmation of the extent of any proposed floodplain revisions. Also, stormwater management considerations have not been fully addressed at this time, and discussions are ongoing in this regard. So far from the public, we've had questions regarding the Saugeen Rail Trail, tree retention, proposed commercial development, traffic, limited parking in the area, and possible flooding. Rail trail comments are focused on keeping it separated from the highway corridor. The applicants are proposing to reroute the existing trail to accommodate their proposed lot fabric. A new section of trail will be constructed to connect the existing network to Adelaide Street. Through the subdivision process, the sections of trail will be conveyed to the town to remain in public ownership. We have heard concerns about vegetation loss and impacts to the existing trail and forest. The proposal will dedicate several open space blocks with trees to the town. The proposed open space blocks are intended to preserve existing vegetation, support passive recreation, and maintain the natural character of the area. Highway commercial concerns were received, noting that highway commercial uses take away from commercial core area along High Street. We also heard concerns about the possible potential types of the proposed commercial uses. The application proposes to decrease the size of the area that is designated highway commercial and facilitate a mix of uses on site, including residential apartments above commercial uses. This may influence the mix of commercial uses that will be proposed on the site. Traffic concerns include impacts to the existing road and intersections, and whether a through street was required connecting the subdivision to Island Street. The application has been modified from the original proposal to provide a cul-de-sac design instead of a through road to Island Street. We will take public comments received to date and received tonight and review with town staff and agencies and the applicant. Thank you. This concludes my report.
Okay, thank you very much for the report. So we'll now hear from members of the public, and we'll begin with the applicant or their agent. So I see the agent for the applicant. Please introduce yourself and you have 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Ron Davidson, planning consultant representing the owners. I'm going to speak in 5 minutes, following which Brett would like to say a couple words about the rail trail, and Amanda will speak about engineering. Hopefully we don't run out of time. I think it's better if they speak before the neighbors do, because maybe it'll just shorten the evening by a little bit. So with me tonight is George Marion. He can put his hand up if he likes. George is the owner of the property. He's with his son-in-law, Brett, and Brett's the one who's been steering the ship on this project. And Amanda is the civil engineer, and John is the ecologist. I'm going to give a brief presentation. This property was part of a larger development proposal several years ago. The land subject to tonight's meeting were supposed to be part of that. It was supposed to be phase 2, but that never happened. Phase 1 of that subdivision was finalized, as you're likely aware. The roads were constructed and the homes were built. So if anyone here tonight lives along Emerald Drive, south of Adelaide Street, your home was very likely part of phase 1. Unfortunately for George, draft approval of his second phase lapsed a number of years ago, which means he had to start over, and that's why we're here tonight. In terms of the proposal, it's a lot different than what was considered a number of years ago, because it's no longer possible to create large single-family lots. Those days are gone. The province, the county, and the town does not allow for large single-family lots. There has to be a better mix of housing. There has to be a much greater density. So the lots have to be smaller, and there has to be a mix of housing types. There's no choice. So this project does involve detached dwellings, townhouses, and a commercial building that may end up having rental units upstairs. About 1/4 of the property will be conveyed to the town. Those lands will include the rail trail and other forested lands. This is not, the only thing I'll say about natural heritage is this is not a significant woodland. However, George and Brett are still proposing to keep 20% of the site forested. I should point out that the rail trail is currently on private property. It's not owned by the town, but like I said, the trail will be handed over to the town. The official plan for both the county or at the county level requires a minimum density of 15 units per net hectare. That's minimum, and the development is just over 18%. The county and the local official plan also require a mix of housing units. Like I just said, you must have at least 30% of your housing in the form of medium density. Medium density is townhouses, apartment buildings. And this development will achieve about 35%. And if the apartments are constructed above the commercial building, then it'll be greater than 35%. There's a lot of work that went into this project, started a number of years ago. Lots of studies were done to help shape this subdivision. I should point out that the environmental impact study has been accepted by the county's ecologist and by the ecologist that peer reviewed it on behalf of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. And with respect to Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, they have no objections to the proposed development. You heard from Julie about the need to amend the zoning bylaw. I'm going to go through this really quickly. I know my 5 minutes are just about up. We're requesting relief for the single-family dwellings to reduce the lot area from 450 to 400 square meters. I should point out that this reduction would not be required for almost all the parcels if the tree preservation lands still form part of the individual lots as preferred by the developer, but instead they're now, those forested lands are going to the town. It's also important to understand that even though the lot area is being reduced, the houses on those lots will still meet all other provisions of the bylaw, so they will fit. The second thing they're asking for is an increase in the lot coverage for the townhouses from 45 to 55%. This will allow for a reasonable but not excessive amount of floor space in the ground floor, and that includes the garage. And again, the townhouses will meet the other requirements of the bylaw with regard to front yard, side yard, rear yard. I wish to point out that council has approved similar requests in the past for 55% lot coverage. Thirdly, the amendment will increase the amount of front yard allowed to be covered by a driveway from 50 to 56%. Just so you know, it's impossible to meet the standard. It can't be done. The driveway would have to be 2.2 meters wide, and you can't park a car that wide. And lastly, the zoning bylaw amendment is necessary to allow for apartments on the second and third floor of the commercial building. Right now, you can only have one. This provision has been talked about by council before. I stood before council, and we had on one other occasion, and we had a similar request approved. That's it for my presentation, other than to say there's more detail in my planning report. And the bottom line is these lands are designated for residential and commercial development. It's very clear. It states that in the official plan, and that's what's proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. So now the applicant, please introduce yourself, sir. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. My name's Brett Chang. As introduced by Ron, myself and my father-in-law, George Marion, we are the developers of Chantry Crossing. I just want to take a second just to thank all of you on council and the mayor for hosting us tonight. And thanks everyone for coming out. It's very helpful to get your feedback on this project. And I want to make clear that this is a proposal. It is not a final plan. And whatever is said here tonight, much of that feedback we will take into consideration when we submit our next revision of this. We already have, as was mentioned in the planning report that Julie presented, we heard a lot of feedback from residents on Island Street, Island and Chantry Cross, Island and Cedar Bush, that the road connection there was not ideal. And so we turned that into a cul-de-sac. I look forward to incorporating more feedback into this plan that we'll hear this evening. I want to talk about two things. One, I want to give you some context on this application and how it came to be. As Moran mentioned, this was draft plan approved in 2004 as part of a subdivision on Emerald Drive. George Marion here, my father-in-law, he built that subdivision. He also built many of the homes on Knowles Lane. He's been involved in this community for over 30 years. Him and his wife and my wife, Sarah, have been here for a long time, and we deeply love this community. I'm happy that that plan lapsed though, because now we get to come back to the table with a plan that I think serves the town's values and the town's needs better today than what we originally had proposed. And I look forward to continuing to solicit feedback and incorporate that into future plans. There are two components that I really want to focus on though, because you're going to hear from Ron as a planner, you're going to hear from Amanda as an engineer, and you're going to hear from us as neighbors and future neighbors. I plan on moving my family, my wife, and my young child into the subdivision, and I look forward to becoming your neighbors in the near future. There's two things I'd like to talk about. One is the tree canopy. I and George recognize greatly how important tree preservation is in this town. We have no regulatory obligation to do any tree preservation at all. That doesn't matter. It's the right thing to do. And so we are saving 2 acres of this property for tree preservation, and we are donating that to the town. On top of that, we've heard a lot of feedback about the rail trail. We love the rail trail. George built the rail trail on this property. He laid the gravel with his own hands. The rail trail is an important part of our family's legacy. I'm a runner. You can look at my Strava for the runners out there. I've run the rail trail over 100 times. It's very important to our family. We have zero intention of eliminating or modifying the rail trail in any way that would not be conducive to the best interests of this town. To be clear, we will make a minor modification to the rail trail to accommodate for the cul-de-sac that we are putting in. That rail trail will run along the right of way, and it will be fully protected from the highway. And I want to make that very clear. It will be fully protected from the highway with the existing tree covering. That's not enough. We're going to plant additional tree coverings to ensure that it's further protected. We're going to be planting additional tree coverings throughout the rail to ensure that the entire rail trail on this property is further protected. I'm very grateful for people like Jerry and Ken from the Rail Trail Association who spent a lot of time working with us on this proposal. And they've asked us if we can turn the Peel Street walkway into more of a destination. We will. We will be financing that and turning it into a parquet that is an investment in the community, and we're very excited to do that, and we think it's going to be a big improvement. Lastly, we're going to extend the trail. The trail up until today has stopped at Peel Street. It is now just an unmaintained path. We've never thought that was right, and we think now is a great time to extend that all the way to Adelaide Street. And what we dream of, and this might be a bit ambitious, but we dream of a day where we can have a sidewalk along Adelaide Street that will finally be able to connect people from Port Elgin into Southampton, all on pedestrian-friendly walkways. That's our goal. Lastly, I never want to have this conversation again about the rail trail. Like I said, we love the rail trail. It's critical to this community. It's critical to this property, and we have no intention of changing it. And I want to finish by saying this. We will donate every inch of land that the rail trail runs on to the town so that nobody can ever modify it again. It will be protected, it will be preserved, and it will be improved in this plan, and we're very excited to do just that. Thank you again very much for all the feedback. I've already incorporated some of it. I look forward to incorporating more, and I really appreciate your time tonight. I'll now just pass it off to Amanda to talk about the engineering side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the engineer for the applicant, introduce yourself, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Amanda Froese with Meritech Engineering, and I'm not nearly as exciting as the rail trail, which I also love dearly. And when we look at the rail trail, we did some grading design to turn it around outside the cul-de-sac and then bring it back in online as fast as possible. But one of the bigger comments that I saw was about stormwater management, flooding, and water quality. So when it comes to stormwater management, we look at two things. We look at how we're going to improve the water quality and how we're not going to impact downstream properties with flooding. Both of these are regulated by the town under the authority granted to them by the Ministry of Environment, the MECP, Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. They change their name so often, it's hard to remember sometimes. So the town can require the developer to meet those standards through the subdivision agreement. And so for water quality, we're proposing to install an engineered structure called an oil grit separator or storm scepter that will treat the oils and grit such that every year the town will inspect it, and then a vacuum truck will take the material and dispose of it appropriately. When it comes to water quantity, we refer to that as flood control. So the development was included in the design of the storm sewers on Emerald Drive when it was first done. Those storm sewers are designed for the minor system. We refer to that as the 5-year design storm. What we're proposing to do on this subdivision is take the major storm, the 100-year storm event, hold it back in pipes under the ground in the road right-of-way such that the peak flows leaving the site are the same as what can be handled by the storm sewers. So normally you would just have 5-year post-development, go down into the pipes, and then you would have every other storm event go over land. But because we know of the subwatershed conditions in Southampton, we're proposing to over-control that. The pipes in the road are a standard thing that we do in Saugeen Shores when we have the perforated pipe systems, the drainage ditches, all those. Or the drainage pits, we're going to follow that same mentality where we can get separation to the groundwater table. Where we're within 2 feet of the groundwater table, there'll be solid pipes sized appropriately for the storage. We also have the dedicated stormwater management areas where we'll have series of these pipes in there. There'll be like a bed of pipes in that area. The plan with that is that once that's done, it can be revegetated on top and become a park space, open space as well. Clean out is done within the right of way and easy for maintenance that way. The rest of the design engineering is boring and pretty standard with sanitary sewers going down to the pumping station down on Front Street, and water main will be looped through and connect up to the highway so that we have the appropriate pressure system and looped for quality. And that is what I have.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe that's all the representatives of the applicant. So now we will look for members of the public who are here to speak either in support of the application or with questions, concerns, or objections to the application. So I have a list here. I'm going to go through that list first, and then when I'm through with that, there are 7 names on it. When I'm through with that, then I'll open it up and ask if there are other people in the room who have comments that they would like to make. But I'll start with the folks who I have in front of me. And I'll just remind folks 5 minutes. So up first, I have Brian Putnam. Mr. Putnam, if you're there, come on up, and whenever you're ready, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councilors, for the opportunity to discuss the development application S4L16Z27 Chantry Crossing. My name is Brian Putman, and my wife and I are permanent residents living in Southampton. Prior to retirement, I was a professional land use planner registered in the province of Ontario for 20 years. During my time, I worked with school boards, hospitals, and hospital networks. I served 4 years in Canada's North, working as a land officer and developing municipal capital and operations policies and programs. I'm here tonight to present a petition signed by 458 property owners, permanent and seasonal residents, and interested persons as of noon today to request council reject this development application. I'd like to deliver this to the council.
Would you, yeah, member staff will grab it for you. Thank you, Mr. Putnam.
As councillors, you should have received a copy of the petition and comments and statements made by residents in the area. I am assuming that you have all had the opportunity to read the petition. It's quite lengthy. To save time, I will not read it verbatim. I also provide for you copies of letters written by property owners who took the time to express their concerns, as well as email comments received from residents that have signed the petition. I have these as well. What is before you, though, is a 10-point petition which addresses the administrative, statutory, planning, and environmental shortcomings of the application. It addresses conflicts with the provincial policy statement and the town's official plan. The application fails to address existing drainage and traffic issues with homeowners in the subject area. As well, the application fails to present sufficient information regarding the commercial portion of the proposed development, an element of the proposal which the developer indicated was required by the town if the application were to be approved. Serious administrative issues, including the lack of a corporate seal and corporate identification and the ambiguity of the applicant, should have resulted in the application not being accepted in the first place. The application seeks to have the Saugeen Shores Official Plan, or the SSOP, amended but does not specify in the application which section of the OP that is seeking to amend. The application is seeking approval for a development which does not meet Chapter 2.5, Section 1A and B of the provincial policy statement, in that it does not promote the redevelopment of brownfield sites, which are present in the town and were recognized by council as far back as 2012. The application is seeking approval for a development which does not meet policy 2.3 of the SSOP, which clearly specifies that the plan is to encourage the reuse and redevelopment of brownfield sites. 66 of the 458 signatures are from property owners of homes on Emerald Drive, Cedar Bush Drive, Albert Street South, and Painted Post Place, many of whom have expressed concerns over current poor drainage, overworked sump pumps, flooded basements, and traffic congestion. These issues will only increase and become more severe with additional development. The application proposes to reroute a section of the existing Saugeen Rail Trail and calls for the creation of a roadway which will bisect the trail, resulting in a far diminished natural view and creating a safety hazard for pedestrians and cyclists alike. The application does not provide information with respect to the nature of the proposed commercial property, the height of the building, site setbacks, and other important details. Over the past week, I received a telephone call from Brett Chang, who represented himself as the developer of the proposed subdivision. Over the weekend, while walking the rail trail through the subject property with a number of other residents, we were introduced to George Martin, who offered to provide information on the development application and answer any questions that we had. Mr. Marion and Mr. Chang, both identified as developers, indicated that 1, they own the land on which the current rail trail is situated on the subject property. 2, they had entered into an agreement with the town of Saugeen Shores to gift the land on which the rail trail exists to the town so that they are protected for generations to come once the application is approved. And 3, with respect to housing density, they were required to adhere to the constraints established by the county and the province. It is very important to stress that the agreement, whether written or implied, between the developer and the town of Saugeen Shores for the gifting of land places the town council in a serious conflict of interest. It is also important to note that the housing density which is conveyed in the application reflects the town bylaw 47-2021, sealed on June 28, 2021, which amended.
So we have passed over 5 minutes, Mr. Putnam. If you could wrap up, please, sir.
Bylaw 47-2021. which amended the zoning bylaw to reduce side yard setbacks to significantly reduce minimum lot sizes, thereby increasing density and furthering the problems of surface lot drainage and traffic congestion. The zoning bylaw amendment was endorsed by the town through its public notice, in that, quote, "The effect of the proposed amendment is to improve the provision of attainable and affordable housing in the town of Saugeen Shores."
So Mr. Putnam, I will have to ask you to wrap it up. I can't give you 5 more minutes. I gave you 5. I need you to wrap
The
it up now,
effect of the
please.
proposed amendment is to improve, okay. In effect, the resulting zoning bylaw changes neither improve the attainability nor affordability of housing in the town.
Mr. Putnam,
It
I
merely
need you to wrap it up, please.
increases the number of dwellings that can be built in a smaller area. The housing remains at market. Granted, the applicant 15 minutes to speak, sir.
I'll give each individual 5 minutes. Every individual gets treated the same, 5 minutes, and there's several other individuals who want to speak. I'm just a, yeah. Thank you. So we'll now move on to our next speaker, which is Terry Manley. And Ms. Manley, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours and you have 5 minutes.
Hello, my name is Terry Manley and Adelaide Street, so I know of what I speak. I am here today to
Ms.
object.
Manley, just make sure you speak right into the mic.
Oh,
So
how about there?
that's good. Thank you.
So I am here to object to the development known as Chantry Crossing. While many of my neighbors will address you on many other matters, all of which I support, I am here specifically to talk about the traffic that the new development will create in my neighborhood. The volume of traffic that currently accesses the north portion of Emerald Drive between Adelaide Street and Highway 21 is already too much for a small town residential neighborhood. It's at its maximum. Come and sit on my front porch and you'll see what I mean. The street is barely 100 meters long and it has 18 households on it. The volume of cars accessing that road to get to Circle K and to Tim Hortons is already too much. Most drivers consider this to be a shortcut, cut through, to get to their gas and coffee in a hurry. They have no other reason to be on that stretch. The corner of Adelaide Street and Highway 21, Emerald Drive and Adelaide Street, and Emerald Drive and Highway 21 is already very difficult and hazardous to navigate much of the time. A short block to the west is Grosvenor Street and Adelaide Street, and also the much-loved rail trail. This is already a hot spot. The police monitor it constantly for people who are speeding and for those who do not observe the stop sign. If the commercial block and 51 new households were added to this area, this traffic problem would be terrible. It would be congested, it would be unsafe, and it would be unpleasant in my much beloved street and area. Once the nice weather comes and all the bikers and hikers return, things are going to get even worse. We're going to add strollers and pets and children and accessibility devices used by the people who need them, and things will be even more unsafe if this is not addressed as a part of this proposal. Please note my objections, and going forward, all proposals and plans will provide some relief for traffic in the area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Manley. So next we have Frances Barrick, who is joining us virtually. Is Ms. Barrick online? Can we bring her in, please? Do we have Ms. Barrick, Haley, or are we struggling? Just one sec.
Sure.
Are you there, Ms. Barrick?
I am.
Okay, all right, we hear you. So whenever you're ready, you have 5 minutes, Ms. Barrick. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Charbonneau, members of council, town staff, and members of the public. My name is Frances Barrick, and I am a full-time Southampton resident. I am also board co-chair of the Southampton Residents Association. The following is the opinion of the board of the SRA and not individual SRA members, as we did not poll our membership on this issue. The SRA board acknowledges there is a housing crisis in Saugeen Shores in terms of supply and affordability. Because of that, the SRA board does not object to the proposed residential development, but we offer the following suggestions for council to consider. First, the land not be clear-cut and attempts be made to save as many trees as possible, and any trees that are displaced or be replaced. All parties associated with this proposal should work hard to minimize the extent of the lost tree canopy. And secondly, council ensures that the requirements for open and green space in this development are met. The SRA board is opposed to the relocation of the Saugeen Rail Trail. It is a well-used, family-oriented trail, and we fear the proposed relocation could pose a safety concern, especially if the entry and exit point is at Albert and Adelaide Street, which is already a busy intersection. The board favors the current continuous nature of the trail from its existing entry point. This would make the trail safer for users and allow existing trees to be preserved along the current trail. And finally, with regards to the commercial block, the board is concerned about any new businesses in that area that could conflict with existing businesses in our vibrant downtown. Thank you for your time and listening to our presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Barrick. All right, now we'll move on to our fourth speaker, and that is Minnie Jakes. Ms. Jakes, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours, and you have 5 minutes.
I'm here representing housing.
Ms. Jakes, just make
Oh,
sure that you.
I'm short,
Yep, go
sorry.
ahead.
Hence the name. I'm representing United Housing for All Saugeen Shores. It's a community advocacy group focused on combating the local housing crisis through education, advocacy, and promoting and supporting affordable and attainable housing solutions. Led by myself, our group engages with the community to address low vacancy rates and high housing costs. United Housing for All is supportive of any potential development that increases higher density, the missing middle housing stock in Saugeen Shores in an environmentally sensitive way. On a personal note, as a member of the Saugeen Shores Housing Task Force, I see this development as a prime example of what the Housing Task Force's 18 recommendations hope to achieve when we presented the report and the Council of the Day accepted the attainable housing recommendations. These attainable housing recommendations can be seen initiated in our town's current business plan, as well as with the support of the County of Bruce to ensure diverse housing needs actually become a reality in our community. Diverse builds and density builds do offer different types of housing and what our residents are looking for, attainable housing. This was the #1 ask from seniors looking to downsize from the current family home to a smaller home, townhouse, or an apartment. We heard loud and clear the need for the type of development for young people looking to return to the area, young families looking to purchase a home or find a larger rental unit. As well, tradespeople in the area who want to go from rental to owning a home. Many of these tradespeople are in the construction industry, helping to build homes in our community. All those seeking houses wanted market-ready homes, as well as rentals for all ages and all incomes. Being able to have an apartment to rent or to purchase, permanent, secure, safe shelter is not a want, but a need for this fellow Saugeen Shores residents. We do have a housing crisis. It cannot no longer be ignored. This development meets those recommendations and community needs for all ages for access to attainable housing. Housing is a human right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jakes. Okay, so now we're on to our fifth speaker, which is Lisa Billings. Ms. Billings, whenever you're ready, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, councillors, and members of Saugeen Shores Public. I am gravely concerned about the ramifications of the development application for Chantry Crossing. My concerns include the loss of green space for humans, the loss of natural habitat for wildlife, the potential eradication of designated Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority wetland area, and of graver and sounder importance to me, given my location like Terry's on the corner of Emerald and Adelaide, increased traffic, congestion, noise, difficulty turning onto Highway 21 from Adelaide and Emerald. I would ask in the consideration of this application for council to please protect green space for humans, for wildlife, for birds, for insects, for plants. Southampton is renowned for its beauty and charm. That's why I left Owen Sound. For residents, tourists, and visitors, safe, accessible, and attractive trails make travel by foot or by cycle truly appealing. Green protected spaces that connect Southampton and Port Elgin are features that continue to appeal to tourists and full-time residents alike. It would be a grievous loss if the rail trail disappeared. As natural woods, forests, grasslands, and wetlands continue to disappear in Saugeen Shores, and Southampton in particular, we, all of us as citizens, become responsible and culpable for the loss of habitat for our other most crucial neighbors, wildlife, birds, insects, plants, to list a few of nature's inhabitants. Invisible and sometimes unremarkable life forms will be compromised or lost altogether with another development with houses, townhouses, driveways, lawns, and multiple vehicles. Such losses of nature's inhabitants in this corridor would be irretrievable. Please protect the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority wetland. When I purchased my home in 2021, it was evident that SVCA had strict rules and expectations of homeowners on the east side of Emerald Drive. According to SVCA regulations, a shed that had been erected on the house that I had bought needed to be removed from the property. A letter to my lawyer from SVCA dated in 2021 expressed deep concern about any further or future amendments that might interfere in any way with the existing channel of water to the east of my property. I would ask council to please address the already challenging traffic issues that will be compounded by development at Chantry Crossing. In the seasons when Airbnbs are busiest, traffic is already a serious concern on Emerald Drive. One house rented for Airbnb purposes has between 1 to 4 vehicles parked in the driveway and on the street. Residents, visitors, tourists who drive, walk, cycle currently experience tremendous frustrations and challenges crossing safely at the corners of Adelaide, Emerald, and Highway 21. My concern, of course, is further aggravation and complications with greater traffic flows and congestion. To end, I am concerned that "not in my backyard" is a phrase that would sound sour. It won't surprise you, given my location on the corner of Emerald and Adelaide, that I am deeply distressed by the number of single dwellings, townhouses, and now apartments that are being proposed. My concerns are magnified by the number of vehicles that would pass by my west, north, east-facing windows and porches. How selfish. Until now, my own proximity to Highway 21 has been shielded and protected by a natural corridor of woodland and wetland, buffers to human traffic and noise. I appreciate your serious consideration of my concerns. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Billings. So our sixth speaker is Paul Leader. Mr. Leader, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Your worship and member of councils and neighbors that are here tonight, I'd just like to say a few words. When I heard about the development at Emerald Street, I was a little bit concerned. The last time I was at a public meeting was dealing with a cement plant on Highway 3. I was concerned about the traffic implications that it was going to generate through the town of Southampton. I was also concerned about the water runoff that it was going to cause for some of the people in our area. Tonight, what do I hear? Traffic concerns and water problems. I have a real concern. I think you as a council owe it to yourselves and to us as taxpayers to make sure that there is sufficient public time devoted to the people so that they can let everyone know their concerns about it. Southampton has a facade and an environment that is unique in Ontario. It's like Niagara-on-the-Lake or Gananoque or places like that throughout Ontario that retain their natural image. Now we're looking at apartment buildings going up through the town, and it takes away from the reason that we're all here. I retired up here 15 years ago because I liked what I saw. But I'm really getting concerned with the problems that this is going to create for us. I think the majority of the people here would like to keep it as it is. And I realize change is inevitable, except from a vending machine. But we've got to keep this in mind. What the people want, I think, is also in the best interest of the community. And I'm not going to dwell on the issues that were already here, but I think before we go any further on this, you need to go back with your planners and sit down and address the concerns that have been highlighted tonight. I really think it's important. The other issue is that this property, from what I read, was already zoned commercial with the ability to put a residential unit up top. But tonight, when I see about the changes coming through, well, we want to take this 400 meters and we want to cut it back to 350 meters, or the front driveway, we need to take it from 60 down to 50. All of that, in my mind, is an attempt to add more units. More units, more traffic, more problems. So I'd really like you to take this one back to the books and relook at it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. So our seventh speaker, and this is the last one on my list, is Mr. Ken Mercer. Mr. Mercer, you're ready, sir. You have 5 minutes.
Mr. Mayor, Council, staff, and Saugeen Shores public. My name is Ken Mercer. I am President of the Saugeen Rail Trail Association. I'm here tonight to thank you for the opportunity to be here and address the rail trail insofar as it impacts on this development. I'd like to thank the proponent. Oh, sorry, thank you. I'd like to thank the proponent as well as town staff for being aware and taking the concerns of the rail trail into consideration. At this point in time, there is nothing that has been presented to the Rail Trail Association that we cannot live with. So I will make no further comment than that. Thank you for your time. If there are any questions about the rail trail, I will stay for that. But other than that, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now that's the end of the list I have here. So now I'll ask if there are other members of the public who wish to speak to the application. You only get one chance to speak, so you've already spoken. But if you haven't spoken yet, come on up and just make sure to give us your name. And sir, go ahead. You have 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Mayor, councillors, members of the public, my name is David Bradshaw. I have a house on Emerald, 2 doors away from Cheryl. And there's been a lot of talk tonight about a number of different issues. The one that I think has inspired a lot of people to be here is the rail trail. And I'd like to see a picture of the lands that are proposed to be given to the town and the small change that's being proposed to accommodate the cul-de-sac so that we can see what people are talking about. If that could be done, that would be great.
Yeah, I think that's something we can put forward and bring back. Unless there's something that exists now, I'll just ask the planner, is there anything that exists now?
If I may, through you, Mayor, there's open space blocks in the trail that is planning to be conveyed to the town. I've just provided the plan on my screen for purposes of.
So this is the picture of where the rail trail is proposed to be and what will be conveyed to the town. Is that correct, Ms. Steeper?
Yes, that's correct. Here's the draft plan. The trail is identified on this plan with a grayed out dotted line.
There you go. All right. So thank you very much. Are there other members of the public who wish to speak who have not spoken? Yeah, come on up, sir. Just make sure to introduce yourself. And when you're ready, you have 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Julian Sellers. I live on Emerald Drive. And I see that the development is probably inevitable and maybe even necessary. And there are numerous technical difficulties that have been brought up here that, for me, I have to leave up to council to decide. One of them really is the density, which confused me. We received a nice letter from the developer, but to me, it kind of confused me as to why we're having to change the zoning laws to accommodate this development. I have 3 other concerns. Number one is the rail trail. If you look at that map that was just up on the screen, the developer made a big deal of extending the rail trail to Adelaide Street. But if you look carefully, that rail trail is in front of the commercial section. And then it follows up the highway. So I have to believe that that rail trail is essentially a sidewalk as opposed to a rail trail, which leads, so I'm wondering why I would conclude that the rest of the rail trail will have trees between it and the highway. So if the people of the town are to approve of this or get behind this, I think we need a more detailed plan than that is showing us. Another confusion I had with the letter that was received is that there was a proposed roundabout on Emerald Drive, and where I come from, roundabouts are ubiquitous, so I'm all in favor of roundabouts, but I'm not sure how that solves the traffic problem on Island View Drive or when Emerald Drive doesn't even cross that street. And finally, I think with increased density, which seems to be a provincial requirement and maybe even necessary, maybe towns should consider more parks. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there other members of the public present now who would like to speak to the application? Anyone else? I'll just give you guys a chance to think, and I'll ask the clerk, are there any written submissions that were not already discussed in the planning report, presentation, or oral submissions?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I can confirm that 3 additional written public comments were received, which were circulated to council this afternoon, and they will be added to the public record of this application. One comment expressed concerns with any reduction or alteration of the existing rail trail. The second comment raised concerns about groundwater and drainage, and the final comment received pertained to traffic concerns. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So I'll now ask again, anybody in the room, I should ask you, is there anybody online that wishes to speak to council this time? No? Is there anybody else wishes to make a comment at this time or speak to council? Yes, ma'am. Whenever you're ready, you have 5 minutes and the floor is yours. Make sure to introduce yourself.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Joyce Sterling, Southampton, permanent resident. Just further to what you just said and what was shown up on the screen, I'm wondering if we can get a copy of that development plan that shows clearly where Highway 21 is in relation to the rail trail, et cetera.
I'll ask the planner to speak to that. Ms. Steeper.
If I may, through you, this plan is available on our website, and I'm also able to provide a copy to anybody who would like one. So I can certainly email or mail, whichever you prefer. If you could please provide us your information you prefer to send that plan to, I can certainly do that. Or you can also visit us, and I can provide a hard copy for you as well.
Yeah, I'd like a hard copy. On the computer screen's a little too small to see, but thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anything else from anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Come on up and whenever you're ready, you have 5 minutes.
Hi, guys. My name's Denise Brady. I'm a resident of Island Street. I had the privilege of speaking with Brett the other day, and he appeased many of our concerns that we had, and they've made adjustments based on our feedback, which was wonderful. I do just have one question from one of our residents who couldn't be here tonight. And I feel like it may have more to do with the town than our developer, or maybe both. He requests to know what metric does the developer and/or the town use to approve new developments? Specific to this development, can it be made public?
I guess I'll put that question to the planner. Ms. Steeper.
If I may, through you, Mayor, there are a number of policies we review in the review of a subdivision application. Some of those policies are in the local official plan and in the PPS, and also provided in the zoning bylaw. So there's a Planning Act criteria that sets out requirements that a subdivision address in an application. Those are actually provided in my report for review.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Anything else from any members of the public with us here this evening? I don't see anybody coming forward. So I will now turn things over to members of council then. I'll ask if any members of council have final questions before we close the public meeting and discuss the application. And to be clear, council is not making a decision on this application this evening. The recommendation we're going to consider when we rise will be to receive this for information. So just so we're clear, that will be the subject of council's discussion after the public meeting ends. But for now, I'll ask members if you have questions, and I'll start with the deputy mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, if I veer over to the comment aspect, please cut me off. I have quite a few questions. I'm only going to ask a couple to enable others to ask, and then perhaps come back at the end. I don't believe it was in the planning report that Mr. Davidson prepared, but this property was originally zoned and is still zoned with holding signals. So it's HR1, HOS, and H highway commercial. The HOS, though, is a very significant portion of the zoning that was there. And so it's not explained in the report why there's an application now which in my opinion, significantly kind of adjust that OS open space category? Is there a reason why there's a change? And I understand it was said by somebody that, that something lapsed, so that's why we're here. However, the zoning is still there according to our zoning map. So I'm just curious to know why the change in the allocations. And I'm not completely accurate, but it was almost in what's there in zoning right now is almost a third HC, a third OS, and a third residential, starting at Adelaide Street and heading south. So why the adjustment?
You're putting that
That's the question I have.
to the applicant or to the planner?
Well, Mr. Davidson's report didn't address why there was something different than
So to the
what
app.
was on a previous plan that had lapsed and is different from what is in the zoning. It just was asking for a
We'll
change.
put it to the
Doesn't
applicant.
matter. Mr. Marion can answer if you'd like.
So it's a question to the applicant then.
You're as confused as I am, Deputy Mayor. That property was draft plan approved and it was all to R1, I believe, at the time. And somehow after the draft plan lapsed, there was an open space created. And I think a lot of it comes to, there was a lot of confusion on the status of this property because all the data that Saugeen Valley and the town were using was from a study that was done by Gamgee and Manero in 1995. And there were significant changes to profile, new pipes were installed, new services were installed, grading was completely revised. I mean, at one time, the town's stormwater system used to dump into the CN property and just gradually percolate through to a watercourse that was along Peel Street, but it wasn't a natural watercourse. It was where pipes had just been dumped into a field. So we had to do a fairly significant modification to the stormwater system with a very large pipe that runs down Adelaide Street and then around on Emerald and then down the old Peel Street allowance, which is now the rail trail. That changed all that topography changed. So there's a lot of confusion because people were dealing with obsolete data that had people confused as to what was happening. And to be fair, anyone just looking at the paper that was on record would have had no idea what was going on.
I'll just add there, sorry, 1 second. We also, in the pre-consultation process, we had the same question. We went through the map with the planners. It was actually Jake who's on paternity leave right now. And what we came to the conclusion, we talked to Jay Posner as well on that call, and it's just confusion. Nobody really knew what happened. If you look at the map and how it's actually laid out, it's not even lines either. The lines go all over the place. And so there was just confusion as to how that came to be, and nobody really had the answer for it. I know it's not satisfying, but that's.
The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I will follow up on my own time to find out how it can be suggested that something was completely zoned R1, but it looks different on mapping. So I'm not too sure how that happens. This is perhaps a question for the town. It was mentioned again in I think Ms. Steeper's report that there are outstanding issues related to transportation. There's been an awful lot of concern raised about traffic, and in particular, it didn't come out quite as obviously as it in the session tonight as it does in some of the letters we received. But the intersection of Adelaide and the highway is a difficult intersection because of its location. So there was a reference to warrants. Those are, I believe, signal warrants, traffic count warrants at that intersection. But could you just clarify what you meant by there's still outstanding issues associated with transportation? What are they basically related to?
The planner.
If I may, through you, Mayor, the applicant had submitted a transportation impact study in support of the proposal. The study concluded that development is forecasted to operate within acceptable service levels. It does not recommend any off-site transportation improvements, but there are some additional details that are required that aren't provided. The applicant has indicated they intend to update the report and provide an addendum. So there's some additional information that is needed than what's been supplied in support of the application.
The Deputy Mayor.
And one more right at the moment, but and perhaps I missed this in a report, but why does this include widening the highway? Why is that important in the location that the highway is suggested to be widened? Is there justification for that in one of the reports? I might have missed reading that.
The planner?
I believe the applicant may be the best to that. I
Okay.
don't have a response.
We can put it to the applicant. And do you have an answer?
I'm afraid I don't. The highway widening has always been on the property since, oh,
Oh,
Thank you.
okay.
Have an
The
expert.
engineer for the applicant.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. The widening was shown on the previous draft plan um, that lapsed in 2015. So honestly, we just assumed that the town would still want it, because if they want the ability to widen Railway Street at that location, then having the land there to do that is possible. So the road widening is not actually widening the asphalt. It's just giving more land to the town for this, but it also facilitates more ownership of the rail trail. So instead of it going through private property, it would fully be within that piece, which also enables that multi-use path to continue to Adelaide Street at that multi-use path width.
The deputy mayor.
Thank you, Amanda, for that. Again, the previous plan was mentioned. It would have been appreciated to have received a copy of that too in our materials. Anyway, I have other questions, but I'll let others have the floor.
We'll keep going this way to Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I'll just ask two quick questions. Would the proponent be willing to list possible uses for the commercial highway block? I recall that when we've had other commercial highway come through, one at Westlinks and one just further to the south on Highway 21, they listed possible units. Would the proponent be willing to list some possible units for the commercial highway block?
We'll turn that to the applicant.
I'll make it easy, yes. It's already zoned commercial. We don't really know what the use case is going to be for it, but I know there's concerns about what that use case might be, and we're happy to go through that process to figure out what would be restricted there at the very least.
Councillor Halpin.
Okay, thank you. I'm quite supportive of having residential above commercial uses. I think it's a good use of space, and there are apartment buildings right across the street from that building as well. My other question was, Emerald Street was part of the original plan of this subdivision. Is that correct? Then I'll quickly. So was Emerald Street pretty much the same type of land and everything that the rest of this was, or was Emerald Street, was it like a brown land or something that was built on?
Yes, technically the whole site is brown site because it was a CN rail yard. That's what it was. And I mean, an interesting thing happened when we first started looking at legally defining the property. We were closing things that were started in council and abandoned in 1865 because once CN arrived, the town just put a black piece of paper over the land and said, CN is king, and nothing happened. So it was really very interesting. And it was mostly much like it is now, scrub brush, flat land. Unfortunately, there was some nice bush that had to go because Emerald Drive was farther west than I originally visualized it. But yeah, it was very similar to what's there now.
Councillor Halpin.
Okay, so there was trees cut down to build Emerald Drive. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'll just finish up on this side and then come to the other side. We'll go to Councillor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And these questions can be directed at whoever wants them. First of all, I guess this would be to the applicant. And it's been said somewhere tonight that the rail trail abutting the highway will turn into a sidewalk. Is that true? Yes or no?
The applicant.
That trail hasn't actually been designed yet, but when you look at that map that comes up, you can see the location of the highway right now, and the rail trail is back a fair bit from that. So it could probably still be cinder and bush on either side as it is now. But again, we haven't mapped it out exactly, but it will be done in discussion with the Rail Trail Association and the town to make sure that it meets the aesthetic that the Rail Trail Association and the town are looking for, and B, that it meets whatever standard we're looking for.
Sorry,
I mean,
I did make the comment on the sidewalk. What I meant by that, and I want to be clear, is that our goal, our ambition, is that you would have a rail trail that's designed as the rail trail currently is, that would extend all the way up to a sidewalk. So once you got to Adelaide, you would have a multi-use sidewalk, and we would have to work with the town on this. That's out of our control, but we would love to have a multi-use sidewalk that would take people right into the high street. That's what I was referring to with the sidewalk.
Thank you. Councilor Davinsky.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. As far as the commercial development goes, full disclosure, I'm a member of the Southampton BIA. I'm the council representative. And I spoke to many members of the board over the weekend to see where their thoughts lie. Surprisingly, they don't have a problem with the commercial development. I thought they would, but they're concerned about the kind of commercial development that would go in there, as opposed to unique shops rather than franchises, and not, as we heard tonight, not to take away from downtown Southampton. And I guess this goes to Ron Davidson.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, the highway commercial zone and your official plan, which designates the land's highway commercial, I like the way it's written for what that's worth. The permitted uses in the highway commercial zone will not conflict with the downtown because they're different types of uses. Yes, you may have some restaurants on here, but for example, you can't have small office space, you cannot have small retail space, you cannot have a grocery store of a certain size. So there's supposed to be two different types of uses so that the downtown is never impacted.
Councilor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Can you give an example of that? Like what type of commercial entity would go into that place? Well, I mean, like, could McDonald's go in there or anything like that? What kind of commercial entities do you have planned for that commercial space?
Mr. Davidson.
Yeah, I think Brett would like to answer that.
I want to be clear, we have no plans. It's currently zoned as commercial, and that's not the priority for this application, just to be clear. Now, the model that we're working off of is the advanced technologies building across the street. That's actually, I think, a great example of what we would love to do, which is have ground floor retail, an independent business ideally, and then you have residential on top.
But to be clear, the retail has to be of a certain size. There's also, just to add on that, there are some uses that are permitted, basically anything related to an automobile. However, in terms of service, sales and such, gas stations, but George and Brett would be shooting themselves in the foot if they put something downstairs, because you're not going to have apartment units typically above a car dealership or a gas bar.
Councilor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Back to the rail trail that is designated here. I noticed, well, I'm sure everyone does, that it runs into the cul-de-sac. So I'm assuming that part of the rail trail becomes cement and we have to look out for traffic, not that there's a lot of traffic on a cul-de-sac. Is that correct?
It would be in the right of way of the cul-de-sac. And so you would be protected from the highway still. The tree cover, the existing tree cover would protect people from the highway, but yes, you would be in the right of way of the cul-de-sac. That's correct. It would.
On the sharing the sidewalk.
On the sharing the sidewalk, yeah. Sorry, George, you want to talk? And it would be on the right of way, and it would be asphalt in that portion of it on the cul-de-sac. For a runner like me, I prefer that. I think it's better for people's knees, but it would be asphalt in the right of way.
Councilor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll leave it there for now. I do have some other questions, but need to be fair for everyone else.
All right, we'll come back to this side. We'll start with the Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a few questions, and I have actually a lot of questions, but again, I'll just ask a few and then maybe come back the second time. It's of the engineer, Amanda, thanks for being here tonight. And mentioned a couple things about the parkland, and you talked about stormwater management, and you talked about perhaps when that if this development proceeds, that when stormwater management is looked after, that there's an opportunity for usable parkland space. Is that what could you just comment on that, or someone?
The engineer for the applicant.
Thank you again, and through you, Mr. Mayor, exactly. So you can bury the pipes under the ground and they will hold the water. And then above that, you can have it grassed. It can be butterfly bushes, it can be meadow space. It could actually be playground equipment, that sort of stuff. So when we look at it, we could do things like when they're talking about the Peel Street entrance and making that a parquet, this could all be under that parquet, which makes it easy to access and maintain, and also maximizes the amount of trees being left behind the lots.
Okay, so that's what the developer spoke to earlier about the parquet. That's exactly what you were talking about, is green space there. We talk about 2 acres of space. Amanda, I don't know whether she was a developer again. I have another question for you before you sit down though. You talk about 2 acres of land that was going to be preserved and eliminating the quote clear cutting. It would be, so what is the total size of, and it's probably in the report, my apologies, but what's the total size of the parcel of land? When you talk about 2 acres of preservation, what's the total size?
The applicant.
Yeah, it's approximately, I'm doing this off memory, I believe it's 4 hectares, so around 6 acres.
The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, 2.2 acres in a hectare, I guess. Thanks. How many hectares?
Yeah, it's about 4 hectares, 4.35, it's around there.
Okay, thank you. Amanda, back to you just for a sec. You know, there's quite a bit of concern about transportation. I've heard, and by the way, I'd like to thank all of the people for attending tonight. I think it's great. And I read all your comments. I read every single one of them. They were long, but that's part of our responsibility to due diligence, to listen to everyone, and that's what we're doing. And so I appreciate your written submissions. Transportation was a big issue. And Amanda, when the transportation study was done, well, first of all, I think there's a second portion. Did I hear from our planner that there's additional work being done on the transportation, right? That's good. Adelaide Street. It can be, you know, that intersection is a very busy intersection. And I've asked the question, just sent a couple emails tonight. Maybe I shouldn't have been, but I did, about just potential traffic lights for Adelaide Street in the future. McNabb's on its way. There's going to be some kind of traffic calming, whether it's roundabout or traffic lights. But during the transportation study, did that come up at all about the need for, whether the warrants would justify it or not? But was there any discussion about traffic lights at Adelaide Highway 21?
The engineer for the applicant.
Sure, through you, Paradigm did the analysis for us, and they're also the ones that are doing the town's transportation master plan. So they had all the update information for the 2035, 2046 situations, and they did analyze that. That was one of the requirements, that we needed to look at that intersection specifically. And with this development and the future 2% traffic growth, there wasn't a point where they found that signals would be required. They also didn't find a left turn lane needed to be required or anything. As is, that intersection functions at the appropriate volumes. And I believe it was they looked at spring and summer because Paradigm was doing both studies.
The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, when was it conducted again, Amanda?
They did it in August, I think they proposed.
During a fairly peak time. I'm a little surprised it wasn't, so it didn't even come close to meeting the warrants, or maybe there was that kind of study that was considered, so it didn't come close to traffic lights necessity. I'd like to go right back to the beginning, and this involves maybe Mr. Davidson, but Mr. Putman, Brian Putman spoke, and he, he talked about his qualifications with planning and expertise in that area, and he studied the town's official plan, zoning bylaw, and I think the provincial policy statement, and he cited, and I didn't write them down, he spoke fairly quickly, but I wonder if Mr. Davidson wrote any of it down, and I'm just wondering, in terms of contraventions, I mean, those comments concerned me. When Mr. Putman talked about that we are contravening our own bylaw, we're contravening the province provincial policy statement, and I can't remember, I have to go back and I made a few notes, but Mr. Davis, could you speak to those? I think there was a minimum of 3, maybe more, where he talked about that were actually there contraventions, and that's concerning to me.
We'll turn that to Mr. Davidson, but I'll ask our planner to speak to it after as well. Mr. Davidson?
Yeah, I may butcher this because I didn't quite understand that myself. I did hear that my application wasn't commissioned properly. It was commissioned. I did hear the one comment about, we're supposed to be, I think the intent of Mr. Putnam's comment was that, so we're supposed to use brownfield lands and perhaps only brownfield lands. And if that's the case, it's kind of a different comment. I've never heard that one before. In terms of compliance with the provincial planning statements, all the other policies, I don't see it. I mean, you've got one planner, registered professional planner against another. I guess you'll wait to hear what your planner from the county has to say in her report.
Why don't we ask our planner to speak to it? Ms. Steeper, can you speak to it?
If I may, through you, Mayor, I'd so sorry.
You're breaking up there, Julie. You may have to turn your camera off.
Can you hear me? Does that work?
Yeah, we hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, so the PPS provides policies and it allows development and site alteration on potentially contaminated sites if the site is assessed and mitigated if necessary. So, you know, the applicant has provided a phase 1. Additional information is still needed regarding a phase 2 and some updated information regarding an environmental site assessment. But some information has been provided in support of that.
The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Okay, thanks for that. And I just, 2 other quick comments, I'll finish up, I guess. Mr. Putman also, in his presentation this evening, which is very concerning to me, was the gifting of land. And, you know, the provincial policy, stating the planning policy, you know, we're allowed to receive 5% parkland dedication for land. That's completely legal. I'm concerned about the kind of the statement he made that maybe we're taking land and it's not legal to take the land. When I read the application, I said to myself, gee, they're not only expanding the rail trail, but they're gifting portions of land and become the owner. We'd become the legal owners. Are we breaking a law? What are we contravening there? I really need to have that clarified because that was a pretty strong statement.
We'll turn that.
That's
to our
addressed to
planner.
me.
We'll turn that to our planner, Ms. Steeper.
Residential subdivision, here, let me just turn off my,
You're breaking up.
can you hear me now? Sorry about that.
Yeah, we hear you, yeah.
In the case of a residential subdivision, the Planning Act allows the municipality to require the landowner to dedicate up to 5% of land for park or other public recreational purposes. There is also the option of cash in lieu of parkland dedication, may be accepted in whole or in part, depending on the proposal. So the applicant is proposing to convey lands identified as open space to the town. So this will serve as, you know, passive recreation and may serve as a portion, or as the 5%, depending on the calculations for that.
Vice Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, if I could, so if the 5% parkland dedication, which legally we're entitled to, if it's increased to 10% or 15% or 20%, that's deeded to the town of Saugeen Shores, is that illegal?
The planner.
If I may, through you, Mayor, there's a calculation that has to be considered in regards to the 5%. There's a bit more that goes into calculating what that 5% is and what that looks like. I can't say what the number is right now and what would be required, and if it surpasses that amount at this stage.
The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Well, could I, Mr. Mayor, could
Yeah,
I
the
ask
Vice
Mr.
Deputy.
Davison to comment on that?
We certainly can. Do you have a comment?
Very much.
For the applicant?
Yes, thank you. First of all of you haven't heard this yet tonight. All of the parkland dedication requirements were actually for these lands were given up years ago as part of the first development. Is it legal to ask for more? Well, if you can really ask for more, you're taking, I mean, we're donating it. And this represents about 20 or 25% of this property. So yeah, it is not a conflict of interest for the municipality to accept land. It makes it sound as if there's a bribe there, and they take kind of exception to that.
I didn't want to use that word, but.
Yeah, I did.
But I'm just wondering, to staff, did we ask for additional property over and above the 5%?
The manager of development services.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Charbonneau. So the discussions in terms of what lands would be transferred over to the town did occur during pre-consultation. And typically, when it comes to tree preservation, the town is interested in taking over lands where there is tree preservation requirements. That was not the case in this particular instance. There is no ecological study that identified lands that were required to be preserved for tree preservation. But there are ongoing discussions with the developer in terms of having buffers surrounding the trail and allowing for the continuation of the trail on lands that are currently on private, under private ownership, but then would be transferred to the town. So there's ongoing discussions. Excuse me. I wouldn't say that the transfer of these lands is necessarily associated with the parkland dedication. I would say the upgrades and extension of the trail itself are likely to meet that 5% requirement. But there is additional lands that are proposed by the applicant to be transferred to the town. And as part of that draft plan, that will be spelled out. If the town and council wants to receive those lands, that's part of the draft plan approval. And if the town does not want to receive those lands, then they would stay in private ownership with the developer.
Vice Deputy Mayor.
Last question, promise. To the developer. You talked about tree preservation. You talked about enhancing the trail system, deeding lands to the town. You also talked about tree planting. You're going to go over and above. Can you pull the number out of the air and tell this council approximately how many trees you're planning to plant on that site?
The applicant.
So I can't exactly on the rail trail in full transparency. I would love to come back to you with that number. I can say that with our agreement with Saugeen, we're contributing $30,000 to planting additional trees within the county.
You, okay. Councilor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. A lot of the things that I made notes for have been spoken about already. We have a diligent county here or council here. I'll start by saying I do remember this land. I wasn't born in this town in Southampton or in Port Elgin, but I did move here almost 30 years ago. And when I came here, my wife and I first stayed in Southampton, just on the other side of the highway from this. And we stayed with the people who owned a accommodation there, and their son was actually the developer of this piece of property, the first phase. And we talked extensively about it at the time. Maybe they were trying to sell me a lot, I'm not sure, but I think they were actually, but I didn't end up buying in there. But I do recall looking at it, and at the time it was at a lesser stage of being reclaimed by nature, because it, as you pointed out, it's a rail yard. It doesn't get more brown than that as far as brownfield. And so there were small trees, and the cedars were starting to grow up, and now 30 years later, it's grown into a proper cedar forest. But let's be clear, it's just natural overgrowth on an industrial piece of land. And so I think that what's being proposed here is adequate, or is being proposed is, like you say, it's the next phase that's been on the plan for quite some time, even though the plan may have lapsed. With regards to the concerns raised about traffic, we've all driven through Southampton, and from time to time, the traffic can be a little confusing, or not confusing, but can be aggravating with the amount of traffic, especially in the summertime. But just recently, we had a traffic study done regarding McNabb Street, which is only a block away, for consideration for a controlled intersection there. And the traffic study came back, and it was done during 2 periods of the year, off-season and during high season. And both of those, it didn't meet the threshold for a controlled intersection. So in as much as the perception is, the reality of the fact is that that the traffic is not as bad as it could be. Certainly adding this number of residences there is going to add to that. And in the future, it may reach the threshold that we have to put a controlled intersection at either McNabb or up here at Adelaide Street. But currently, I don't believe that it does. I'm interested in the comments that the Saugeen Rail Trail made. So my understanding is this is the terminus point of the Saugeen Rail Trail. It doesn't go any further than this without basically riding on the streets. And this proposal here will actually make it official that it'll go right up to Adelaide Street on a trail as opposed to down and across Emerald Drive. So I think that's a good thing, and I don't see any conflict of interest with that either, as we just went through. Where the 5% parkland dedication is a minimum. It doesn't state a maximum. So I think having that turned over to the town it's a nice thing, but it doesn't certainly influence the decision. One of the things that we heard from the engineer, from Amanda, was about the drainage and the infiltration and the...
Councillor Mayette, do you have sorry to interrupt, but do you have a question at this stage?
Yes, okay. My question is about the drainage then.
Yeah, we should, let's stick with questions if you can.
Okay. So you're going to increase the drainage capacity because currently this area drains down and ultimately it comes out at like Bay and Huron. It all comes kind of down to that main outlet onto the beach. And this past couple of weeks in particular, but over the years, that section of drainage has been overwhelmed many times, including just recently, the people who live down on Huron Street. So can you talk again about how this is going to help that situation that currently exists and certainly offset any exasperation of the current drainage problems that we have now?
The engineer for the app.
Sure. Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor. There is a study going on right now by the town. There's a public meeting coming up in the next couple of weeks about that sub watershed and that final outlet to the lake. We also did a floodplain study. We had Greenland come in and look at it and determine where the flood lines would be on the property and how that needs to be implemented. And their conclusion was this is all stormwater backing up due to capacity of pipes. It has nothing to do with riverine habitat or the lake. So what that means is there could be constrictions downtown currently or downstream currently from this site. So what we have proposed is to take what was allowed to go through in the design of those pipes that was done by Gamsby Manorow in the early 2000s, and we're going to meet that allowable flow, but for all storm events. So all the water that goes today in the 100-year storm will be going into the pipes instead of going overland once this development is done. Does that make sense?
Okay, so that's encouraging that the engineering study concludes that it'll get better than it is currently. One more question is with regards to the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. This land is not owned by any means by the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, but it's a regulated area. All of Southampton is in a regulated area. I didn't see in the agenda whether the Saugeen Valley Rail Trail Association, Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, of which I'm a board member, have they come back with a conclusion as to building in this area or not?
The engineer for the applicant?
Through you, for sure. They came back with 2 comments. They accepted the draft report about the floodplain, and so there is no floodplain on the property. They had a couple comments. They wanted us to seal the report. We sent them the draft version for comment first. And then the second piece is there's some soil in there that has peat, so they want proof that the peat is removed before a building is built on it, which you can't do because it's not structural. So those were the only 2 comments we have from them.
So we've had a good go around here. Does Councillor Stack have anything? Councillor Stack.
Okay, I think these are, Candace, I think they might all be for you. And I'm going to preface this. I read this very jet lagged, so 50-50 with it. Those great questions. So just in the report, we noted a couple of things. So, and I know we've talked a lot about stormwater management. So it does look like we said in the report that the town's not fully satisfied. So just to be clear, is the stormwater issue resolved based on what Amanda has said, or is there still work ongoing before we do the actual approval?
The Manager of Development Services.
Thank you for the question through you, Mayor Charbonneau. We actually have our external engineers reviewing all of the engineering components for this development. And there were some, I believe, still either some outstanding issues or there's been additional information that's been provided by the developer that hasn't been fully reviewed yet. So before this comes back for a decision, we'll make sure that all of those issues are addressed. One of them in particular is related to the high groundwater levels for the site. Because there's proposed underground infrastructure, we're wanting to ensure that the height of the groundwater won't interfere with the mechanisms that are proposed and designed.
Councillor Stack.
Okay, so the groundwater was my next question. So are we going to be enforcing ground level water monitoring prior to the sale of lots? Because there's a note, looks like bullet 18. I don't remember which report that was in or which document that was in, but we did talk about groundwater issues, kind of, I think, to your point. So are we going to be monitoring that before the sale? Because I do get sort of candidly concerned, I'm being candid in my comment, concerned when we talk about putting something in the purchase and sale agreement, given some of the feedback we've had from the community related to purchase and sale agreements, or long-winded way of re-asking the question, are we going to be monitoring that before the sales go through?
The Manager.
I can take that back and have further discussions on whether there can be perhaps conditions of approval put into a subdivision agreement or what the expectations are in terms of individual builds for the development to ensure that there are no groundwater issues encountered in the future.
Councillor Stack.
And then the other comment was on the environmental study. So I think I'm guessing you're going to say similar to with respect to the groundwater study. So is there still environmental studies ongoing? Because I think the report said the last reviews were conducted in 1995.
The Manager.
Yes, that's still outstanding and will be resolved before a decision is brought back for council.
Councillor Stack.
This should be my final question. And I think it might be for the proponent. So I'm struggling a little bit with the rail trail rerouting. So is the rail trail going to be rerouted? So for the commercial corridor that you have at the back end of your development, is the exit from the commercial corridor going to be where the rail trail crosses over?
So there's no rail trail there at the moment. It's an unmaintained path. And so it would be fully extended for that. And that's kind of voluntary, but we think it's important. So the way that will work is it will continue through the Peel Street walkway. It will go along the highway, candidly. We are going to plant shrubs, which will protect the trail from the highway, and it will exit exactly at the end of the commercial property to Adelaide.
Okay. So we've got a good go around here. So if there are other final questions from members, let's make them quick ones. Okay. So who wants to go? Anybody on this side first, since you guys were, and we'll come back. So, okay, you have another question, Councillor Davinsky. Councillor Davinsky.
Yes, there was a statement made by one of the speakers about natural habitat perhaps being destroyed. Did you do a study on natural habitat? What was the results of that study, and is it being destroyed? Simple as that. Thank you.
The agent for the applicant, introduce yourself, sir, when you get up there.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. John Morton from AWS Environmental Consulting. I live in Shallow Lake area. I've been doing natural heritage impact assessments for almost 30 years now. I was a former employee with the Ministry of Natural Resources, Snow and Sound. I've served as an ecologist and a biologist, fish and wildlife technician, deputy conservation officers, fish hatchery technician, anything you want to look at natural heritage. I undertook in 2021 natural heritage and environmental impact study on the property. Did over 9 site visits, almost 10 hours, covered 2 different seasons. As been talked about a lot tonight, the site is a former brown site. It's been manipulated, altered, soils pushed around for over 100 years from CP rail and so forth. So there's not what I would call natural land there. Yes, it has regenerated over the last 20 or 30 years. Trees have grown up and that's part of Mother Nature's process. Through my evaluation, I did not find anything of any significance. It's not a significant woodland. There's no valley lands there. There's no wetland there. There's a drain that goes through the middle. It used to be an old water course, but it was altered and turned into a drain 50 years ago. I have no idea how long ago. There's some aquatic vegetation associated with that drain, such as cattails and bulrushes, which you see all the time on roadside ditches, but that doesn't constitute a wetland. The only species that I did identify at the time, it wasn't an issue, was black ash. Black ash was put on the endangered species list by the province of Ontario in 2022. I was on site in 2021, so in my report, black ash was still considered a common species. That was brought up during the review process with the county and their ecologist and consulting partners. And I went back out in 2025 and undertook a black ash survey in accordance to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, provided them a report that there was no live black ash on the property that met the standards. There was a few sucker growth where a dead tree or a tree dies. Typically with ash, you'll get sucker growth coming up from the roots. They were 3 feet high, and that was about it. And I think there was maybe about 5 or 6 of them. They were already showing signs of dying, all from emerald ash borer, an invasive species that's killing ash trees all across Ontario, North America, as a matter of fact. That's why black ash was put on the endangered species list, because of that. So that was the only species that was identified, and it was submitted to the Ministry of Environment and also to the county and to the town. You've got copies of that report, and it was accepted by the ministry that the development would be in compliance under the Endangered Species Act because no black ash met their requirements. So other than that, anything else that was there was common species. Common birds, robins, blue jays, cardinals, rabbits, porcupines, nothing of any significance or rarity status. And because the woodland was under 4 hectares, it didn't meet the significant. So that's what we were looking at. There was no buffering that I needed or no areas that would be identifiable as non-development.
Okay.
Hope that answers your question.
Councillor Davinsky?
It's just, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The last question I have is, if we go down that street right now, we see a row of trees from one end to the other. Will there still be trees on the section of the rail trail that we have there? I know you just said, and this is through you to the planner, to the applicant, you said there would be bushes in front of the commercial development. What about after that? Is that still going to be 2 rows, 3 rows of trees?
The applicant.
Thank you, Councillor. It's a great question. So on the trail extension, there are no trees right now. On what we're proposing, it's just the highway widening. And so we will plant shrubs to protect the trail from the highway on the extension. On the existing trail, it will be almost exactly the same as it is today. There will be trees on both sides. It'll be protected from the highway on one side, and you'll see existing trees on the other side. And then up until the cul-de-sac, when you will see a reduction of trees as we shift the rail trail slightly to accommodate for the roadway. But there will still be trees throughout the rail trail. And our plan, I know it's contentious, but we want to donate it or put in a trust or something so that nobody can cut those trees down.
Other questions? Councillor Dinsky?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I just thank everyone for taking part in tonight's meeting.
Further questions then, the Vice Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, and I just don't want to, about the rail trail and the president's here, and I just, one more time, I'd like to hear this from the president of the Rail Trail Association. My understanding, the trail is going to be maintained, enhanced, lengthened. I just want to hear from you again. Do you have any reservations about what the developer's planning on doing, and do you have any significant safety concerns?
Mr. Mercer?
Yeah, thank you for the question. No, we don't. Plain and simple, we think what has been proposed will suit our needs and accommodate the community.
Thank you. Any further questions? I just had one question myself. One of the, and I can't remember who it was now, but one of the representatives of the applicant mentioned an agreement with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. You have an agreement with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. What's the nature of that agreement with respect to this application?
That's correct. So we went through, obviously, the archaeological review alongside their monitors. They accepted that archaeological review. They also are concerned about the tree preservation, as I think we all are. And so in exchange for the reduction of trees on that property, we are going to make a $30,000 donation to a not-for-profit wildlife organization that is going to plant additional trees, ideally somewhere in the Saugeen Nation, but we're really focused on Bruce County.
Okay, that was the only question that I had. So let's have order, please, everybody. So that brings us to the end of our public meeting. So I'll now declare the public meeting to be closed, and I'll read the resolution before me here. And the resolution is that local official plan amendment L-2025-018 and zoning bylaw amendment Z-2025-062. Oh, no, sorry, geez, I'm on the wrong one. Apologies. The recommendation is that council receive the draft plan of subdivision S-2025-004, local official plan amendment L-2024-008, and zoning bylaw amendment Z-2024-039. SKG Holdings report for information. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Halpin. Discussion, final comments, the Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Halpin.
Thank you through you. For those of you wanting to leave, this is probably going to be the good part. Just, you might not want to leave yet. As a comment, I just wanted to start with some recognition for what is already on phase one of the development here. It's actually the envy of a lot of people because of the way it got constructed with the kinds of houses that were built. They don't all look the same. There's underground servicing, nice light standards. There's a sidewalk through there. As a longtime Southampton resident, I'm incredibly envious because, we don't have a lot of areas in town that have that kind of charm. So, and I do want to just appreciate the phase one activity. And, I would like to hope as this continues along that kind of attention to detail fits into some of what may come here. I did want to make a couple of comments. First of all, just a couple of, in my mind, clarifications. It was mentioned about a gas station on that corner. As far as I know, there would be no potential for a gas station to be there because of source water protection. So, that certainly should be a question that maybe an easy answer can come out about a gas station. It was somebody mentioned about a roundabout on Emerald. I didn't see that anywhere in the reports that we received. There were some comments made about short-term rentals. I implore members of the public to look back at some council discussions about short-term rental over this term and just go from there. I did want to make a couple of comments though. I might be the only person in the room, I hope not, but who has known that part of Southampton my entire life. And, referring to it as a brownfield, well, maybe slightly accurate, but not completely accurate. There was where the trains came in, where the tracks were, there was a bit of a V shape sort of off the tracks and then back towards the station, which enabled the train to turn around. As a kid, that was the route to the beach because the outlet came out very close to where Beach Road is because in fact the spur line went all the way down to the short dock or to the railway dock at the long dock area. As a kid, there was lots of wildlife in there. So describing it as a brownfield, not completely accurate. And plus, once you got beyond that V, it wasn't railway land. It was just land. And, it was a very different kind of opportunity than what we see now. But things change. I'm concerned about connections. So I appreciate all the comments that were made about the rail trail. What was not said, though, was about the way that the rail trail comes in and then sort of diverts to the west and goes down through the Memorial Park and kind of hooks up with a link that shoots you over to Grosvenor Street. For anybody, coming into Southampton, hoping to get downtown, that's a good connection to have. So I do think that what we're seeing is protecting that, enhancing that, making that hopefully a much more attractive and viable route for somebody using the rail trail, because that to me is a good connection to downtown. I don't have an opinion really one way or the other about the extension of the rail trail over to Adelaide, but what concerns me about that is that you're shooting bikes off, people walking, no problem, there's a sidewalk there, but you're shooting bikes off, and those bikes then are not really supposed to be on the sidewalk. So for them to go anywhere, they're going to have to get on the highway, and to be officially, legitimate on the highway, they're going to have to cross the highway to travel, the northbound way on the other side of the road. So I'm not, that link with the rail trail is a nice thing, but the real connection piece for me is that link that goes down to the west and then connects with the route via Grosvenor Street. And the comment was made about a multi-use trail on the side of the highway there. Someday, probably not in my lifetime, because it's going to have to be multi-trail all the way to downtown and pass to the bridge. And certainly, that's a much bigger project and a much bigger discussion. Mention was made about things in the commercial block. I did take a good look at the zoning bylaw, and I just wanted to remind the developer that when Tim Hortons came to town, it was not unlike this. A lot of people came out to a meeting, and we did have some pretty significant contributions to that discussion, which led to what we have now with Tim Hortons in Southampton. So first of all, any kind of drive-through thing that would be there, there's a requirement about a 10-meter setback from any residential area. But look at what happened behind the Tim Hortons. There was a berm there. There was significant fencing. There was significant plantings. And, I know that the people who were backing onto that commercial land were concerned. I hope that they're satisfied with what resulted there. And I guess I would ask the developer to keep in mind what happened a little bit further north when, potential comes for some commercial development there, to make sure that that buffer is appropriate and that it's there. I am concerned about the little cow path trail that goes through there. I wish any rail trail connection would be on that side of the property, but I understand it being on the highway. I was very interested in the tree information, so I'm looking forward to more coming. I understand, a preservation plan is not required. I appreciate there's been a lot of talk about trees. SON was mentioned with no objections. I read the SON report. It's one of the more fulsome reports from SON that I've seen on a planning application, and there were a couple of things in there about black ashes and some other things, and I respect, their contributions, and they made a great suggestion about, sometimes we should be thinking about an off-site appropriate scaled creation of a natural area. And I'm going to keep that in mind going forward in my interest in Southampton and Saugeen Shores and Port Elgin. I did want to also address, though, there were great comments in all of the presentations that were made to us, and it was nice to have not a lot of copy and paste ones. So kudos to all of you for taking the time for thoughtful responses. I learned an awful lot from them. And, I wrote down certain things about, soil conservation, reusing the soil potential, and I hope that the developer, again, reads all of those comments very carefully, because there's some real gems in there with some thoughtful ideas. One of the residents who spoke tonight mentioned about where she lives and backing onto this. There are not too many rules about buffering potential between residential areas. So I would just encourage the developer, as the application keeps rolling, and it's not a done deal yet, to consider, the areas where some of this new stuff is backing up against existing stuff, and what could happen at that boundary to make that a little more palatable for both sides of the fence or a hedge or something like that. I'm, not going to indicate any kind of preference one way or the other, just to say that this has been really helpful to have all of the input from the public. As a matter of fact, when I asked the question about the previous plan, a member of the public watching on TV sent me a copy of it. So I can see the design, and there's a great deal of similarity between what was and what we're seeing now. And, anybody in that area, when you bought, that idea should have been there. So, this is not necessarily new. However, I really implore the developer to consider the comments about habitat, natural environments, trees, and that sort of thing, and connections that make sense. And, to keep that in mind, because there's a great neighborhood there already. If we're going to add to that neighborhood, if you want to add to that neighborhood, try and make it match that character as much as possible. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Further comments before we conclude? Councillor Halpin and then the Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I just want to say that, like, I'm a member, the council appointee for the rail trail, and I think we can all rest assured if the rail trail says that they're happy with this plan, then I think that we can be happy with the plan that the rail trail has. So that's one of my comments. The other thing is I appreciate the amount of tree retention that is happening. That I think it's important for people to realize is they don't necessarily have to do that. They're not required to do that. So they are retaining the trees, and they are making those open spaces willing to have them be public land, which is also a very good thing. Things have sure changed a lot. I think the developer and the planners could say from when why am I stumbling over this word? Emerald was built from the way it is today. Significant differences. And I think that we're getting the density that we need. We're getting the retention of trees above and beyond what we need. I'm also pleased with just the willingness of the developer to listen to people and to, make this a really nice development for this part of town. Just another comment, I think that it'd be great to lay out some potential uses for the commercial as that comes along. And I think that it's a great idea to have residential above commercial. It's density, it's protecting farmland, it's protecting woodlands to do that. And I also read every comment that was received. I read them all. I appreciate your concerns. Some of them are very good concerns. And I think we all need to remember that this was a brownfield land. So, and there were also probably trees cut down for your residences there also, as there will be trees cut down for this one. And anyways, just a comment. It just seems like some people say, well, I moved here because I didn't want any change. You can't be the last person to move here and say, I moved here, there'll be no more development. That's just a comment. Thank you.
The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just wanted to say to Mr. Marion and your son-in-law, I think it's important that you're involved with those first two phases, and you listen to the members of the public in terms of their needs and their concerns. And I just want to say to you both, continue to listen. Listen to sympathetic, empathetic towards their needs, and continue to listen about the needs of our community for green space, tree preservation, tree planting, and if there are any rail trail considerations for safety concerns, which I heard there are not. But continue to work closely with them, but continue to really invest in trees, landscape, and any buffering, absolutely to the highest degree. If this is to proceed, those are really important things.
Thank you. Any further comments at this time? Councillor Davinsky?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I want to thank again everyone who came and took part in this. I know during the course of this evening, I saw Brett somewhere. I don't know if he's still here. He probably is, but he was taking notes furiously. So the applicants are listening, they're taking notes, and there could be changes based on what you had to say. If you haven't said anything and you just wanted to see what would happen, you might want to talk to either one of those applicants, George and Brett, because they're listening. They have open ears here and they've addressed every single issue that has been brought before them tonight by us and basically by the public as well. Thanks again for your participation. I too read all those emails, very interesting. And you know what? Some of them are, you look at them, you go, now, why didn't I think of that? Well, that's exactly the type of thing we need. Thanks again, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any further comments from anyone? If not, I'll just say thank you to all of you folks for coming out tonight. It was a really great discussion. I really appreciate everybody's participation. Members of council, members of the public, thank you very much. And with that, you've heard the recommendation. I'll ask all in favor. That is carried. Thank you. It's 8:44. We've been at this for 2 hours and a quarter. Why don't we take a 10-minute break? We'll reconvene at 5 to the hour. for local official plan amendment L-2025-018 and zoning bylaw amendment Z-2025-062, Southampton 2 zone. This is a public meeting under the Planning Act. If anyone from the public is interested in this application or wishes to receive a notice of the decision, please send an email to bcplpe@brucecounty.on.ca. First, we will receive a report from planning staff. Then we will hear from the public who are here in person, virtually, or who have submitted correspondence to the email address that I just mentioned. Of course, anybody wishing to speak will have one opportunity and a maximum of 5 minutes to speak. Then council members will have an opportunity to ask questions, and I'll ask them to reserve their comments on the application until we've heard from the public. Members of the public are advised that the right to appeal the decision on this application is limited to specified persons and public bodies as defined in the Planning Act, or the owner or applicant of the land subject to the amendment who have provided oral or written comments to council on the application before the decision is made. After we've heard from the public, council will discuss and consider a recommendation on this application. So I'll now declare the public meeting to be open, and I'll ask the planner on the file to present the application. And the planner on this file is Karina Smith. Ms. Smith.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Charbonneau. So the purpose of the application is twofold. The first is to amend the environmental hazard policies of the town's official plan to permit watercourse floodplains to be managed in accordance with a two-zone floodplain management concept. And the amendment to the town's official plan would apply broadly to the areas within the town, including the settlement areas of Port Elgin and Southampton. The second part of the application is to amend the town of Saugeen Shores zoning bylaw, and that would be to implement the two-zone floodplain management concept for specified lands, specifically those within the town of Southampton. The purpose of the public meeting this evening is to present the proposal to council and the public and to obtain feedback that we can take back, discuss with the town and the Conservation Authority, and address through a future report to this council. So this project, council is likely familiar with. The town and the Conservation Authority had entered into a cost-sharing agreement in 2022 to update the floodplain of certain watercourses within Southampton. That resulted in a report being prepared by Water's Edge Environmental Solutions in 2024. And that updated the floodplain mapping and showed that the floodplain on those watercourses that were studied had increased since the last mapping update in 1992. The floodplains in the town of Saugeen Shores are currently managed using a one-zone approach to floodplain management. And for those who may not be familiar with that, the one-zone approach treats the entirety of the floodplain as a hazard, and there are certain restrictions to development and site alteration within that area. Under the provincial planning statement, development and site alteration are not permitted in the floodplain in the one zone concept except in certain circumstances. And those would include areas where a special policy area has been approved for certain works that may be subject to or may be needed to locate in the floodplain, such as a dam. And the third situation would be for where a two-zone concept is approved. So under the two-zone concept, it essentially treats the floodplain as two zones. So the inner portion would be the floodway, and that's where the greatest hazards occur and where flows are needed to pass freely. And then the flood fringe, that is where the risk to public safety and to infrastructure is less, where the flows are less and the depths may be less severe. Under a two-zone concept, development and site alteration may be permitted in the flood fringe, so that outer portion of the floodplain, but it would be subject to certain conditions. And that would include potentially floodproofing of the building or the site, and also ensuring that there is safe access to the property. In September 2025, Greenland Consulting Engineers, who are available for questions today, did complete an update to the flood work for Southampton and those watercourses that had been previously studied by Water's Edge, and that produced the floodplain mapping for the two-zone that is available today and attached to this agenda. The amendments proposed to the town's official plan and to the town's zoning bylaw are also attached to my report, and they detail what the policies and provisions would be. I did want to note that The schedules to the local official plan and the zoning bylaw are still under review, and we have not received full comments from the town and from the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority with respect to that mapping. So for example, the Conservation Authority will be looking to ensure that with the implementation of the floodplain and the two-zone approach, that we haven't overlooked other hazards that might be applicable to the area, such as, for example, a valley slope. I would also note that the schedule for the official plan amendment was not ready at the time that we prepared the agenda, and so was not included in this package, but we will make that available online for the public. But it does align with the mapping that had been produced by the engineering consultant, as well as the zoning schedules that are included in this agenda. That concludes my report, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for the report. So now we'll hear from members of the public. I guess, does the applicant wish to speak to the presentation? No. So we'll move on then to anyone from the public here to speak either in support of the application or with questions, concerns, or objections to the application. Are there members of the public here who wish to speak to it? Come on up and introduce yourself. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm Amanda Froese, an engineering consultant from Meritech, and I've been working with launch property groups who have property on Grenville Street, just north of High Street. So I do just want to say that we are fully supportive of two-zone policy, and we're very grateful for staff bringing this idea forward to enable development in this area. The Latham report from '92 recognizes this area as further study needed. So very grateful and very happy to have been part of the process with the town staff and county staff through this. We've also worked a lot with SVCA to look at how to enable our development to happen. And with that, launch had come in with a severance for 2 lots. And with that, we had difficulty because of the new floodplain. So we couldn't get these 2 lots to go through the severance process because of the definition of floodplain. So we engaged Greenland to look at these 2 sites. We wanted them to update the model for all the work that had been done to put in storm sewers and a stormwater management pond on Grenville Street. And then we also wanted them to look at what was defined as a watercourse through their property. In the '92 Latham report, they talked about being a spill area, not a defined watercourse. So we did have Greenland go out, we did a site walk, and they have come back with that as a recommendation. So what we would like a staff to consider as part of this official plan amendment is to include the definition of a spill area that is the same as the SVCA policy manual, and then to apply those same stipulations and restrictions. So flood proofing, those same pieces that would be in the flood fringe in this area. That applies to when it's a 2-zone policy, but it also applies to it as the current floodplain 1 zone. So what we would ask is that council bring forward a recommendation to Saugeen Valley to also update to have this area defined as a spill area. And then when the 2-zone comes in, it would carry over. Their regulation would still stand as a spill area, allow us to develop as a flood fringe. And then that would automatically, you wouldn't need to go back to Saugeen Valley to have this done when the OP and the zoning show this as a spill area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there other members of the public here who wish to speak to this application? Don't see anybody jumping up. I'll ask, are there any written submissions that were not already discussed in the planning report, presentation, or oral submissions?
Through you, Mayor, there was no additional public comments received.
Is there anybody online wishing to speak to council on this? No. So I'll ask one more time. Is there anybody here in the gallery wishes to speak to this at this moment? If not, I don't see anybody jumping up. So we will now turn it over to council then. I'll ask if any council members have questions before we close the public meeting and discuss the application. Questions from the members. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I guess this may be for Karina first. So one question, this is going back to the Latham report, which was the last update from 1992. And there was a comment sent to several members of council. I'm not sure if all members of council got the question from Amanda and Brooks. but in the comment, it said that the Latham report identified the area that has been identified by the Greenland report as a spill area, and that the Latham report had identified that same area as spill back in 1992. So why was it changed? I guess that's what at what point was it changed? Why was it changed? I don't know if you can answer that question.
The planner?
Yes, thank you for the question through you, Mayor Charbonneau. So the current zoning for the area does identify the spill area. My understanding is that through the updated work that had been done by the consulting engineers, that spill area was replaced essentially with the floodway and the flood fringe. But we do have our engineering consultant online who may be able to speak to that further.
Okay, I'm going to bring in the engineering consultant to answer
Good
the
evening,
question.
everyone. My name is Jim Hartman. I'm with Greenland Consulting. We undertook the two-zone floodplain mapping for the subject area. And so the Water's Edge report, which preceded the two-zone study, it was the latest floodplain mapping that was done under the federal funding program. It identified a water course through the subject lands. We have reviewed that since that time to confirm whether it is a water course or it isn't a water course. And of course, since that time, the MNR has changed what a water course is, so the definition of a water course. So we've reviewed that in the field, and we've determined that it does not meet the requirements or the criteria for a water course. So it remains a spill area.
Councilor Grace?
Thank you. So just to confirm, the change is because, is that the federal government that changed the definition of what a water course is?
Mr. Hartman?
Pardon me. That is the Ministry of the Natural Resources criteria.
Provincial.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you. Is the Latham report, is that relevant to, I mean, if there's this interceding report that preceded the Greenland or the SVCA two-zone Greenland report, is the Latham report still used as an authority, an important authority?
Mr. Hartman?
The Water's Edge report, which was completed in 2023, has been accepted by the Conservation Authority as the latest mapping for the municipality, for the town.
Okay, the Water's Edge, and just one, so did the 2023 report, is that including that changed definition of water course?
No, it did not. It changed subsequent to the report completion.
Thank you.
Okay, further questions? The Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Halpin.
Thank you. And through you, a question for the planner to just ask for a bit of a timeline and confirmation of information going out to the public. And then is there any continued efforts that will be made directly with the public, particularly since, you know, what we have before us tonight really is specific to Southampton with the drawings and the mapping and that sort of thing. And I don't think that was the same information that was there the last time. So I'm just looking to see how we might be at least attempting to convey information to the public about the most current mapping in the process and what happened before.
The planner.
Yes, thank you. Through me, you, Mayor Charbonneau. So when the town initially submitted the application to the county, shortly after that, there was a public information center that was held, and that was advertised in the newspaper. And we did receive some attendees at that public information center, which was held by the town, but included staff from the Conservation Authority and the county, as well as the consulting engineer. After the applications that the town had submitted were deemed complete, they were posted to the to the county's website. Actually, my apologies, they were posted in advance of the application being deemed complete, so that they would be available for the Public Information Center in November. So we did post that onto our website. And then after the applications were deemed complete, we did do another newspaper notice, which is can be provided through the Act to indicate that we were having this public meeting as well. And so any subsequent updates will be posted to the county's website, and we would be bringing back a future report to this council.
The Deputy Mayor.
I think Mr. Hartman had his hand up too, but I guess I'm just concerned about, I know that we have some developers who have participated along the way and showed up at meetings and that sort of thing. I just am concerned that somebody who might be sitting on a piece of property, it might be vacant or it might be underdeveloped, but it's just one lot. And, you know, that they might not think that all of this has any impact on them, but it could potentially. And so I guess it just behooves all of us, if we look at the map and we know somebody who has one of those properties, to kind of give them a nudge to take a look at what's going on, because, you know, it's not just a development, a big development kind of idea. It will affect some individual one-off lots in various locations too. Anyway, again, Mr. Hartman has his hand up.
Yeah, I see that. Mr. Hartman, do you have a comment?
I just wanted to clarify something I said earlier. I said the definition was the Ministry of Natural Resources. Of course, conservation authorities are now governed by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. So I wanted to clarify that. It is still a provincial definition, however.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I've followed this along with my colleague, Councillor Mayette, and as we're on the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. So I went to the public meetings and that, and I followed this along, and I really see it as a positive thing for developing in Southampton, and just by raising the land and they can rectify and allow for more development than they could before. My concern is how can we deal with the situation with the launch lands where they say there's a dispute about, well, this waterway was here and now they're saying that, you know, they've done things to rectify it, to change it since that was done. I drove by there this weekend and today, and there is no water course there, and there is no shortage of rain for these last few days. So how can we mesh those two things is my question. How can we mesh that new information with the existing plan?
The planner.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Charbonneau. So what we would be doing is taking the comments that have been provided to date, both in advance of this public meeting and any comments we received today, and discuss that both with town staff. But we haven't had an opportunity to have a discussion with the Conservation Authority regarding the comments that had been provided by launch. So those are still to be reviewed, and we will report back on those with our next report.
Thank you. Further questions from the members? Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Two things. One of the things that we've heard through the Saugeen Valley Conservation, where this has been applied in other regions, is because you have two zones, it looks like you get an expanded flood zone. And what we found is that particularly when it gets areas down south of us that are right along the lake, where your house or your cottage wasn't previously identified as being in a floodplain, and all of a sudden the two zone seems to expand that. What's the downward consequence of that was insurance companies took a look at this and said, well, we can't insure your house anymore because it's identified in a floodplain, even though it's in the second zone. And so I hope that that doesn't become an issue here where, it's an unintended consequence of having an area identified. But I know the intent is to make it so that you should be able to have more development, but the development that's already happened, they maybe didn't take that into account when they built them, that your house is in a floodplain and now it's identified as part of the second zone. So I hope that that doesn't become the issue here. We're not on lakefront property here, but when you get down into the lower areas there. And as far as the water course goes, it's not a water course by the definition of it being a year-round flowing stream, some of these little creeks and ditches and things, but they certainly are full of water right now. And the other thing they're full of right now is rainbow trout. The trout have found their ways into these little creeks and the ditches behind Clarendon Street. And in fact, that we'll be out there tomorrow, the Lake Huron Fishing Club, trying to rescue some of these fish because they get trapped when the water levels go down. These fish are stranded in these little pockets. And so we just got a license today to go and rescue some of these stranded fish, because you can't just go down and start netting fish. They'll arrest you for that with a piece of paper to tell you can do it. So yeah, it's not a real water course, but I wish somebody would tell the trout that.
I guess maybe I'll just turn the first part of Councillor Mayette's comment there, ask a question to the planner about that. So just for clarity, like what is happening here, and you can correct me if I'm not articulating this correctly though, is that this was in the mapping that was done a couple of years ago, this was all identified as floodplain. And now this refinement makes less of it floodplain and the fringes of it flood fringe, right? So nothing has really, with respect to people's insurance or the impact on properties, the impact before was they were in a floodplain. Now, many of them are going to be moved into a second tier or into a flood fringe, right? There's nothing as a result of this been added to flood fringe that was not floodplain before. Am I correct about that? Hopefully I'm articulating that well enough. Mr. Hartman?
Sure. Yes, that you are correct. So the floodplain that's been identified in the 2023 study identified the full extent of it. And the 2 zone is now reducing the amount that's floodway that would not, where development would not be permitted beyond the exceptions that were identified earlier.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully that clarifies that. Are there further questions from the members? I guess I'll just ask one more then. Do we have a sense of how much property in hectares or acres or however you'd like to express it has now been removed from being floodplain and become buildable again by being in the flood fringe? Through this exercise, how much land have we put back into development in the northeast quadrant of Southampton? Any idea? Mr. Hartman?
I don't have the number. Perhaps one of the planners have that. I don't have that information. It would be something that we could calculate easily and report back to you, but we don't have that. I don't have that at my fingertips now.
That would be my suggestion. We can take that back and report it out in the next report to council.
I'd very much like to hear that number, because through this exercise the municipality has undertaken, I can't recall how much money did we spend on this exercise, the manager of development?
Thank you for the question, Mayor Charbonneau. So the Water's Edge project, I believe, was initial $40,000. And then there was an additional $10,000 that came from the DC Reserve Fund to do the 2-zone floodplain study. I can report that we were successful in receiving an additional grant money to offset the costs. We were over budget from that $10,000 allocation, but we have received funding to offset that.
Yeah, so for $50,000, just looking at this map and guessing, probably 100 acres of land has been moved, or more, a couple hundred acres of land been moved from not being buildable, frozen, back into being buildable, and it's in the settlement area of Southampton, meaning that now that we've done this, we're not going to have to sprawl out even further and build off in other directions. So I think Anyway, I'd really like to hear that number because I think that's a really important indicator of the success of this project. Councillor Grace.
Thank you. Your question, Mr. Mayor, just made me come up with a question for Mr. Hartman, perhaps. Do you know if, to me, this would be a good way for the provincial government to spend some money to expand programs like this so that municipalities aren't having to foot the bill for this and whatever? Is this something that the provincial government is looking at expanding in a significant way?
Any comments to that, Mr. Hartman?
Yes, they have, and I think perhaps the manager of planning could speak to a bit more of the details of this, but through a federal provincial funding program that this project was funded under, that funding program still exists, and there are still projects that are being funded under that program.
Okay. Anything else from you, the manager? No. Any other questions before I close the public meeting? Seeing none, then I'll now declare the public meeting to be closed. I'll read a resolution that local official plan amendment L-2025-018 and zoning bylaw amendment Z-2025-062 Southampton 2 zone by the town of Saugeen Shores be received for information. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Halpin, second by Councillor Grace. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. All right, so that just moves us to the end of the public meetings. Now we're on to reports of municipal officers. Couple items there. The first 7.1, consent for lot addition B-2024-086 for Taylor and Ms. Smith, the planner.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Charbonneau. So this report is for council's information. As you may recall, we had brought a report forward to council in December with respect to this consent application for the Taylor property. That was affecting lots 35 and 36 on Plan 497. At the time, we were processing the application as a new lot creation. And subsequently, we have confirmed that the two parts of this are actually existing lots within an older plan of subdivision and therefore separately transferable, despite the fact that there's a house that straddles the property line. And so through that, we were able to have the applicant update their application from a lot creation proposal to a lot addition proposal, which means that from one of the lots that they currently hold, they would transfer a piece to the receiving lands to address that encroachment. Under that policy process, there is no servicing, or the same servicing policies don't apply. And so we were able to resolve the issue without the condition relating to the tertiary septic system and it being maintained in perpetuity. That condition was removed. The conditions were subsequently updated and endorsed by staff, and that application has since been approved.
Thank you. There is a resolution. The council received the consent for lot addition B-2024-086 for Taylor. Report for information. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Vice Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Mayed. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Next then, 7.2, deeming bylaw for B-2024-086 Taylor, Manager, Planning and Development.
Thank you, Mayor Charbonneau. So in relation to the previous report that you've just heard from Karina, a deeming bylaw is required to legally merge the lands to facilitate the lot addition for Taylor. The proposal is to sever a portion of lot 35 and add it to lot 36 on Plan 497. Further details are provided in my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. There is a resolution the council adopt bylaw 38-2026, being a bylaw to deem lots 35 and 36 on Plan 497, Town of Saugeen Shores, not to be lots on a registered plan of subdivision. Is there a mover and seconder? The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Davinsky, discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. All right, now we will be moving on to item 8, close to public. It's recommended that council move into a close to public session under section 2393B to consider an ongoing investigation respecting the municipality, a local board, or municipally controlled corporation by the ombudsman appointed under the Ombudsman's Act. The recommendation is that council move into a closed public session in accordance with the Municipal Act 2001, section 2393B, to consider an ongoing investigation respecting the municipality, a local board, or a municipally controlled corporation by the ombudsman appointed under the Ombudsman's Act. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Grace, seconded by the Vice Deputy Mayor. All in favor? Council will now move into a closed public session. Okay, so we're going to rise from closed to public. I have a resolution. The council arise from the closed to public session and resume the regular council meeting. Is there mover and seconder? Moved by Stack, seconded by Davinsky. All in favor? That's carried. And I will report that during the closed to public session, council approved closed to public minutes and discussed and provided direction to staff regarding an ongoing ombudsman investigation. All right, so now we'll move on to item 9, reports and business arising. Item 10, consent agenda. One item there on the consent agenda. So the resolution is that item 10.1 be approved. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Councilor Gray, seconded by Councilor Stack. So there's that one item there. Anybody have any comments on that item? Don't see any. So then all in favor? That is carried. And now we're on to bylaws. Resolution that bylaws 37-2026 and 38-2026 are hereby read, passed, and sealed this 20th day of April 2026. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilor Stack. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Resolution for the confirmatory bylaw, that bylaw 39-2026 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council of the town of Saugeen Shores is hereby read, passed, and sealed this 20th day of April 2026. Is there mover and seconder? Moved by the Vice Deputy Mayor, seconded by Grace. All in favor? That is carried. And finally, resolution to this regular council meeting of April 20th, 2026 hereby adjourns at 9:49 p.m. Is there mover and seconder? Stack and Halpin. All in favor? That is carried. Council stands adjourned. Have a good evening.